life without the melody. No sweet love song for you, for me to sing. Imagine my life without your morning smile. No look of love that says stay a while. These people sent to test us, sent to play with our mind. Come on, baby, we're a little stronger. I know we can survive. Oh yeah. We're moving to a different part of our lives. On a raging sea, they say no man survives. We're moving to a different part of our heart. Come on, baby, now let us start. These people sent to test us, sent to play with our mind. Come on, baby, we're a little stronger. I know we can survive. I know we can survive. Could there be life without the melody? This what's on earth without the E-R-I-T. Imagine my life without your morning smile. That look of love that says stay a while. These people sent to test us, sent to play with our mind. Come on, baby, we're a little stronger. I know we can survive. These people sent to test us, sent to play with our mind. Come on, baby, we're a little stronger. I know we can survive. I know we can survive. I know we can survive. I'm feeling like a number one again. I like a born again. Hand in hand in the sun. Hand in hand in the sun. Hand in hand in the sun. Ooh, yeah.
All right, that was the English singer Richard Ashcroft, and I'm doing my worst Gordon Elliott impression to welcome our guest from the UK, Mr. Afikoman. What's going on? Hold on, I think I was on mute, so you've missed my retarded impersonation of the British accent, but I want to welcome Afikoman to the stream to talk about what happened in the UK. What's going on, man?
Hi, thanks for having me.
Yeah, I tried to do a Gordon Elliott impression to start us off, but
Oh, okay.
I accidentally I unmuted myself on the stream, but you still couldn't hear me. So I guess you got spared that. Um, anyway, so it's been an interesting past week for
Oh, yeah.
for the people of the UK. You live there. Tell us a little bit about yourself and what this election was about, both for you and for the British people.
Well, I'm originally from Israel. I've been in the UK for 33 years, so
Mhm.
most of my life, and I've lived in London all that time, various areas of London. But I wasn't really switched on the politics here. Um, I had a general sense of being slightly to the left most of the time. Um, and I wasn't really curious about it. But I've noticed a drift of the left. For me, it was in 2014 when in Israel the Gaza crisis was one of them was occurring, and I was used to getting hate mail from the right, but suddenly, from like extreme right types. But it was never from
Like
anyone
the
on the left.
BNP.
Yeah, or like KKK types, but there were very few, and it was very rare, that I would get anything like that or come across anything like that, that sort of thing, But suddenly I was getting it from people on the left, and because I knew a lot of people in kind of creative industries because of my work. Most of the people I knew suddenly were anti-Israeli and really, really obsessed with it. Like, what do you care so much? I found it very strange. I mean, I didn't care about Israel as much as they did, and I was born there. It was strange. So since then, I've been following things, very worried what would happen here. We can go into the details of why it was the way it was and the crisis that occurred here since 2016 referendum.
Right.
But there was a good
So
chance for Corbyn to get in through, sneaky pacts with other parties and so on.
right with Nicola Sturgeon. So
Yes.
um, I guess let's start especially with like your personal experience. So would you say that this change in attitude has it lost you friendships with people over the years? Because we've spoken a few times offline. Certainly, there's a lot of people who live abroad for many years that have Israeli citizenship. They don't necessarily. I mean, we can bring up the name of Gilad Atzmon. He lives in Britain
Yes.
and things
Well, I
like.
know him personally. I've played with him. I've met him many times. He's been to my house a couple of times.
And have there
Uh,
been any charged conversations between the two of you over?
yes,
Yeah.
yes. But I was not, politically aware.
Hmm.
So I was just shocked that he was so anti-Israel. So I would give him hell over that. But he just laughed me off like, "Oh, you don't know anything," blah blah blah. And it seemed like there's no point talking to him about it. I never liked him as a person, anyway. So. And I'm not like a friend of his. He was here, because of the business I'm in. Um, he was here for some advice. I didn't really know who he was. Um, he happened to play with a friend of mine who was my neighbor, a childhood neighbor. So that
Hmm.
was the connection. Um,
So
but
besides
yeah,
just him, has it been like a difficult? Um,
yeah. I mean,
it's been
yeah,
difficult.
yeah.
Like personally, like obviously, there's a lot of people in England who are long, long, long time labor supporters who especially in the creative field. Everybody's
Yes.
talking about Lily Allen. Um,
Oh, yeah, yeah.
so
I actually work for people who worked with her and stuff like this. So yes. I've never met her personally, but I'm gladly. She seems a bit unwell to me, like personally,
right, we
you
have
know.
the same thing here after the Trump election. There was the
I'm
same
not saying it
experience.
is a bad thing. Yeah.
Right, but we had we had Miley Cyrus who went on Periscope and cried. She bawled her eyes out and said,
Yes.
"Mr. Trump, I guess you could be my president." So everybody was laughing at her for, I don't know, a week. But although there were a lot of other people with equally ridiculous takes, but you know, I
Yeah.
think it's different because I live in the Midwest. Most people literally couldn't care less about politics here in this part of the U.S. and they'll vote and then they'll go 4 years without actually paying attention. Whereas apparently it's become a little more intense over there in London. So can you explain maybe you don't have to go too far into detail and obviously you have personal considerations, but what's it like being, I guess, an opponent of Corbynism in the social circles that you're in?
Well, there's two types of Labour voters, which we can talk, and I'm sure you've realised I mean, at
Absolutely.
least two types.
Yeah.
Traditionally, there's been two types. There's the unions, which include teachers and nurses and all those sort of people, and there's the working class people who work in factories and work for the big you know equivalent of Walmart and so on. Which a lot of them are unionized and they vote Labour, so state employees and so on. And a lot in the entertainment industry, but they're not hardcore lefties. You probably know the same kind of people in the US.
Yeah, my dad's a union
Um,
member. He just
yeah,
retired.
and then they're not really hardcore. They don't really, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And then there's a growing kind of hard left um, group that has taken over the Labour Party. So some Labour voters have recognised that the party has been taken over effectively, and that's not my party anymore. I'm not a hardcore leftist. I'm more of a centrist, and they either voted something else or didn't vote at all, or voted conservative at this time. Um,
So is
it,
is
it,
that like when you started, working over there? Was it considered like really a stigma to be either associating with or supporting the Tory party, or was it like less of a issue back when first of all, when you started working in England, and then especially
it
in the
was
past few years?
always in the creative industry. It's been the standard to support the left.
Hmm.
But because of Corbyn, the left had to. He caused a split in that left because much of that left was not really a proper left. It was kind of just kind of left leaning. For higher taxes, but not for state owned everything, which is what Corbyn is about. Um, so um, so I had arguments with people. Actually, today I had an email from a friend who was a Corbyn supporter, and it sounds like we fought and didn't, but he kind of we disconnected, without saying anything mean to each other. We just stopped replying to my emails, you know, and they interpret anyone who's not left as same. You probably come across the same as is evil or stupid.
Right, and
Um,
and I think I've had people that were friends of mine going back to middle school, and they basically started, calling me because I was a Rand Paul supporter. I only voted for Donald Trump because, Senator Paul had no chance and he dropped out by then. But once I started like putting up messages that, I support Donald Trump because I hate Hillary, I had people who were telling me, yeah, you've become like basically some sort of caveman, misogynist, things
yes,
like that.
yep,
So for those of you that are listening, I put on the screen this. By the way, the guest today, if you've just joined, is Afikoman, who is from the UK, originally from Israel. This book that I put the thumbnail for, "Dangerous Hero" by Tom Bauer. That's a good
yes,
text about Corbyn. Very revelatory. There's another one by Rosa Prince that's a little more focused on other periods of Corbyn's life, like his youth. But I personally, so back to the subject of the person himself, but we can talk also about labor as a whole. I do find Jeremy Corbyn to be a fascinating individual because he spent so much of his career didn't really have a trajectory to power, and obviously that
Hmm.
changed very fast in 2015. So I'm not going to walk through it, but maybe you can. What was it like watching Jeremy Corbyn walk into the leadership of the Labour Party?
That was like very strange, but kind of predictable because of I was already aware that something was brewing a year before he was elected. So when they had an election after the um, previously the failed to win the election, Ed Miliband failed to win the election, so that he resigned, and they had they had an election for a new leader, and I was surprised to see him as a candidate.
Mm-hmm.
Turns out the only way with their rules, the way the rules of the Labour Party work is you have to have a certain number of people supporting you to even be a candidate. You can't just declare yourself a candidate on your own. So the person that he got to support him was Sadiq Khan, the lovely mayor of London,
Right.
who we can dedicate a whole show just to him. He's a lot of trouble. But he nominated him, and he stood for election, but was dismissed. Nobody's going to vote for him. Just a few hardcore. Nobody took him seriously. And then there was a massive thing. How would I describe it? Suddenly, a lot of people were joining the Labour Party, and all the old Trotsky fans and all these various Marxists, and I'm not an expert on the various
The
leftist,
various like
hard leftist,
subcategories, right?
yes, there's all sorts of groups. There's something called the Socialist Workers Party or something. Anyway, all of them suddenly rejoined the Labour Party and voted him in as leader. Most of the members of the party, the parliamentary party, the people who sit in the parliament, were shocked that suddenly they had a leader who was completely out of sync with them. They tried to rebel. There's few left. There was few splits. I didn't follow every detail of it, but he just stuck in because these guys never give up power easily once they're in.
Well, that's what
Yeah, I was very shocked.
one of the people in the chat, MC, who's sort of he's a conservative from I don't remember what state he's from, but he's asking if you think Corbyn will actually resign as leader in the end.
I think he'll be forced to. Obviously, he doesn't want to. It's funny because when whoever, I can't remember if it was Theresa May or Boris or whoever, as soon as there was the smallest thing, he would jump up and down demanding that they resign.
Right.
Immediately. He always calls for people to resign immediately. But when he's failed so badly, he announces that he's going to resign, and then he's vague about when, and then he gives a date. But he will be going, but that doesn't matter, I think, sadly, a lot of the focus has been on him, and I'm now worried again that with a new leader, they might still. I don't think they're going to get in, but I think they will contribute to a bad atmosphere here with all the negative energy. In my opinion, anyway, they produce a lot of negative energy.
Well, so I have also some similar, projections. I was just watching a video with Chris Williamson on Russia Today about it, and
Yes.
they were talking about what's her name, Rebecca Bailey or whatever. I don't remember her name. Maybe
Yes,
she's gonna be
Rebecca. We call it Rebecca Wrong Bailey. Her name is Rebecca Long Bailey.
Right. So they're talking about a number of people that they could transition labor into that would not necessarily reverse the Corbynista trend. But if you look through, I think what I'll do is at some point today before we wrap up, I will play the video on the screen, and obviously I'll have to coordinate the timing with you because otherwise we're going to be out of sync. But um, it's very funny, the comments, especially on RT, which are basically blaming, the Mossad for controlling parts of labor and destroying the party from within. But not just so. What's so funny about the people who are Corbyn supporters isn't just that they'll blame random problems on the Mossad or on offshore accounts and things like that. But even people like who have absolutely no ties and who probably are more Corbynista than anything else, they start to claim that they're Mossad plants. So it's hilarious. I was watching.
It is. I mean, that's what I meant about the obsession with Israel. I mean, they seem to think that Israel controls everything. I mean, if only Israel had, 10% more control than it has. I mean, it's a small country. I mean, it does okay, but I mean, the Mossad is it's not that capable. Sometimes you wish it was, but it can't do all that.
Yeah, what I would say is
I
that
think they disconnected. Sorry.
like the problem that they're going to lead. So I don't throw out any possibility. Obviously, it's possible that there's people within the Labor Party who are sabotaging Jeremy Corbyn. Maybe some of them are, working for the Mossad. But the fact is, when you throw those accusations at people randomly simply because they say something that you think is a little daffy that has nothing to do with the Mossad, that creates the same type of hysteria that happened here with Russiagate. It's McCarthyism. That's what they call it here. That you start to suspect people for crimes that are literally invented out of thin air. So I think that actually works to the betterment of everyone who's against Corbyn. I personally, I'll tell you what, I've never supported, in my adult life at least, any sort of politics like his where you have this type of shenanigans that he did. For example, talking about Corbyn personally, when he was the Haringey Council official in charge of housing, he was a local official who was in charge of housing. He was also at the same time working as a union rep for the union that was striking against the council. So he was playing both sides of the same conflict.
Oh yeah.
And that in my mind, that shows how unqualified he is to be a leader, because once you manipulate people in order to just squeeze more power and more money out of the same pot, a pot that's supposed to be for the people that you were elected to represent, that I think is the mark of a tyrant. I don't care whether you think that's Mossad, whether it's KGB or whatever. It's simply, the fact that people never really looked into that and other allegations of things that went on when he was a local council member. It shows just how delusional Corbyn supporters are.
Absolutely. They are delusional and they are very, very angry. Not just now, but from before. They're impossible to talk to. It was insane, I mean, the number of people that blocked me on Facebook, I'm sure, you have the same experience, as soon as you don't toe the line. They've made the whole party intolerant. So it's not just the Corbyn people that are now intolerant. The whole party is intolerant. They're all very angry and very agitated. And the British people are not stupid. I mean, the guy that can't sing the anthem.
Right.
It's not a good start for a prime minister. He claims that he spoke to Hamas and Hezbollah because he's trying to achieve peace. Fair enough. You need to speak to these people eventually at some point, I guess. But he didn't speak to the other side. I mean, he didn't speak to anyone in the Israeli government, whether it was a left-wing government or a right-wing government, and Israel had both.
Well, you could say the same thing. He always says that he was a part of the Irish peace process, but there's never any record of him talking to Protestant paramilitaries who were,
Exactly.
unionists. He only talks to people who are like the most extreme fringe of the Republican guerrilla groups, the IRA and allied groups in the UK. So the idea that I'm actually lobbying for peace, it's literally so that's one of the things that I think is really not talked about enough in terms of the issue with Corbyn and whether he should be the prime minister of the UK. Because let's put to the side. I know obviously you have very strong feelings about his statements about Israel, but as prime minister of Britain, technically you could chart a course where you're against Israel. But if you are pro IRA, which is the group that's wanted to bomb the UK for decades and has killed plenty of British civilians and British
Well,
servicemen.
it,
I mean,
they
it's
tried to
ridiculous that
kill
you
the
that
prime
then
minister.
you're going to command Her Majesty's Air Force and all of the different services and the MI5, which he's talked about disbanding, and then people are supposed to really, especially in the face of this London Bridge attack, which is probably more of a worrying trend than Irish Republican terrorism, which isn't really as big of an issue as it was back in the 80s. So
Yes,
I think that people who looked at that and were conscious of it and still thought they would vote for Jeremy Corbyn, I think they really don't care about Britain as a country. They literally, there's something wrong with
correct.
their calculus.
I agree, and I'll give you a couple of stories. I mean, there were photos of British soldiers using his face for target practice.
Mm-hmm.
Um, he didn't have the trust of the army, that's for sure. There were articles saying that the Secret Service, your equivalent of the NSA or CIA or whatever, were going to withhold information from him. I mean, how could he work as a prime minister if they're withholding information from him because they don't trust him? I mean, I've developed this rule over the years of living in the West as an Israeli. I've noticed a strange thing. Every politician that is anti-Israel is insane. It's just the way it seems to work. I've never heard a politician that talks against Israel and then say something that makes sense.
So
Um,
I've thought about this because we've talked about it, and I actually
yes.
I brought up a case that I think is an exception, but
Okay.
I think I'll show it to you in a couple minutes after we get through this. But
Okay. Now the rule doesn't work the other way. So
right.
you could be pro-Israel and be, a bad politician. You see what I mean? It's just that obsession with Israel is what I'm talking about. Why should someone in the UK be obsessed with Israel? It's not really a country that they're very involved with. They buy and sell stuff to Israel, but it's a kind of an ally of some sort. Um,
What's a
and that's
friendly
about it.
trading country?
Yeah, exactly. It's
It's
not a
not it's
country
not
that.
like if like I think with Britain, if you were to say what's a hostile country to Britain, I'd say Argentina, right? I mean,
Potentially, Israel is definitely not hostile. they allow lots of Israelis to live here, and lots of English people live, British citizens live in Israel or visit Israel with no issue. So yeah, definitely on friendly terms, but not a major concern for the average British person. What happens in Israel? It's only these leftists who are obsessed with Israel. They're literally obsessed. They know. I've become an expert in Israeli history thanks to them. Not an expert, but you know what I mean, a lay expert, if
right.
you want. Because they keep bringing up all these things, and you have to start researching, to answer them. I have to thank the Corbynistas for it effectively forcing me to educate myself about history, about socialism, and why they're so bad. Because I didn't know that socialism was such a bad thing. I thought that socialism was kind of just wanting to help poor people and the disadvantaged, which seems on the surface a pretty good thing to go for to help the disadvantaged. So
Right.
But I started looking into it, and
So I put on the
seems to.
screen for those of you in the chat. So this is my article from last week. It was the day before the election it was published,
Yes.
talking about Bernie Sanders, and I call it Bernie in the Shadow of the Red Rose because I think it was pretty predictable that Jeremy Corbyn could have a bad result in the election last week. I don't think I would have predicted it would be as bad as it was, but this is going to. I said the day before that this was going to reflect very, very badly um, on Bernie Sanders because Bernie Sanders and Jeremy Corbyn came into the public sphere uh, as around the same time. They were both very, very anti-Iraq war, so that was during the 2000s. Which I, by the way, I do give credit to Jeremy Corbyn for standing against the Iraq War because, I was in high school at the time. I really wasn't able to participate in politics, but
He did it for the wrong reasons. That's what I
yeah.
can
So
say.
so I would say that even doing the wrong thing doing the right thing for the wrong reasons, I think you should still give him credit for that. But also Bernie Sanders and Jeremy Corbyn started to reach leadership positions in the mid 2000s, which was about 4 years ago, when obviously there was the Ed Miliband fiasco in the UK where they lost the 2015 election, and at the time they thought, oh, he's really, really failed, like Ed Miliband. Nobody thought anybody could fail as bad as he did, and he resigned within one day, which was considered very unusual. So Corbyn took power within the Labour Party at the time, and Sanders, about a couple months later, he started to gain steam here in the U.S. in the Democratic primary. Their politics are very similar. I would still say Jeremy Corbyn's a little bit more radical, but it's not by a tangible margin.
Yes.
But what's happened here, and I go through it in detail, is that it has nothing to do with the anti-Semitism, which is something that's in the press a lot, which, it is something that is worth talking about, but I don't think it's on the tongues of many voters. It's not about the fact that Corbyn supported the IRA or that Bernie Sanders supported the Sandinistas in Nicaragua when they were fighting, against the U.S. in the Cold War. Voters don't really care about that. But my
And helping
article,
smuggle drugs.
who? The
And when they're
Sandinistas?
helping Escobar send cocaine into the US as well.
Right.
I think they were doing that as well.
Well, those were the Contras. Those were their enemies.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Yes.
So I would say that the reason that Jeremy Corbyn lost is painfully obvious. It is about Brexit, and a lot of people were saying. I saw, I think Ben Shapiro and even Prager were saying, oh, the British people, they rejected anti-Semitism. It had nothing to do with anti-Semitism. It had everything to do with the fact that Jeremy Corbyn couldn't grow his spine and support Brexit the way that a very large portion of Labour voters wanted to, or at least give a clear support for the Remain side, which was the other half of Labour, or more than half of Labour. And therefore, he got completely destroyed in the northern part of the country. But
yes,
go ahead.
I think this is a message that they're trying to drive. That Brexit was the issue that he failed on, right?
Yeah.
But that Labour failed on, but I don't think so. I think it's him.
I think that
people just didn't like him.
Yes, there's certainly people who didn't like him, but if you look at, so there's one poll that I looked at that was very, very detailed, and the Lord Ashcroft poll from November, and the Brexit thing does give like a good indication, because the conservative voters who did vote Remain said that they were going to stick with Boris, and then the Labour voters who voted Leave overwhelmingly said that they're not going to support Corbyn at all. They're going to vote for someone else. They're going to vote. Usually they just said they're going to vote for Boris, even if they don't like him. So it was a huge mistake by him to, and I don't know if he could have avoided it, because the Labour Party is divided in terms of the voter base between Leave and Remain, whether
I,
it's Corbyn or somebody else.
I still think the emphasis on Brexit is a media manipulation, and it's not real. I think even if there was no Brexit, maybe he wouldn't have suffered so badly, but he would have lost big time,
Right,
because they
but I
don't
think
like him because they realize who he is. They realize that he's not really an English prime minister, and he doesn't really love the country. He doesn't seem like a patriot. I mean,
yeah,
you know,
he spent more
and
time
they are
supporting
patriots.
countries in South America than he has supporting his own country.
Yeah, they look at the Labour conference and they're waving Palestinian flags and EU flags, and they're thinking, "Where is my flag?" You know, they just don't relate to his politics and the way his internationalism, and he seems not to care about them and to look down at them, and it's even worse with the rest of the party. They seem very disconnected. They seem to be a party of the elite. They seem to be a party of the urban elites and the the imported help. That's what it feels like. I'm unusual as an immigrant, and I'm supposed to be a Labour supporter.
So,
But
well,
yeah.
I would say that if you're bringing up like the issue of Corbyn supporters, I would say that some of them are worse than him. Some of them are
Oh, of
just
course.
unbelievable. Like Corbyn, when you hear him talk, like he seems at least to like, because he's an old guy, not because he says anything good, but he seems like a very relaxed, relatable person until you actually think about the substance of what he says, which is usually ridiculous and like, especially when it comes to economics, he's basically illiterate. But the people who are his, the Owen Jones people, the people from Novara Media that Sargon talks about, like Ash Sankara or Ash Sarkar, I think her name is.
Oh
So
yes.
those people are, they're much worse than him in terms of their just the body language and their bearing. But
Yes,
just to square out the article, I think that the fact is that Boris won the election partially because he stuck to the message. He was very, very, very determined to, say, I'm going to come through on this. This is my career on the line, Brexit or bust,
mm,
all of that. And I think it was a very smart strategy on his part. Whereas
yes,
Corbyn, he used something, the NHS, which has apparently been a topic that the Labour just wheels out every time to talk about as their
mm,
main message. So the same thing is going on here in the U.S. And this was my premise, and I'll show you that the socialist Americans who are Bernie supporters, they haven't processed this. The fact is that Bernie Sanders is heading towards the same exact cliff that Jeremy Corbyn had, and it's not Brexit because obviously we're not going to be Brexiting, but it is immigration, which is
yes.
it's a little related to that because every
It's more
single
than a little.
immigration for many British people was one of the central issues of Brexit. Obviously there were fisheries, which if you're the majority of British people, that's not really the problem, especially if you live in, I don't know, somewhere that's landlocked, but
Mm,
but there were a lot of different constituencies in England that hate the fact that it's being flooded by refugees and other economic migrants who aren't even refugees at all, people from Romania and from Poland. But here in the U.S., the immigration issue is even more slanted. And Bernie Sanders used to be against open borders. He actually said it in a famous interview that the left hates. They love to bring it up in order to kind of show him to be xenophobic when they need to. But he actually called open borders a Koch brothers proposal. Now, 4 years later, because this interview happened in 2015 as he was starting to run for president, he's actually adopted what are basically open borders positions as far as healthcare, as far as
yes,
deportation and
I've
everything.
heard
So
that.
so I think I'm just going to run through some numbers here. A 2018 Harvard Harris poll asked, "Do you think we should have basically open borders, or do you think we need secure borders?" Overall, the response was 79 to 21 against open borders. Even women between the ages of 18 to 34, the most pro-immigration group, support open secure borders with a 68% majority. Hispanic support 81%. African American support 74%, and even self-identified Democrats at 68%. And I actually brought in 3 other polls that show the very similar responses on other immigration issues. So these Democrats are basically playing to a very, very small part of the public when they support open borders.
Yes. I think they're playing a very dangerous game. I don't know if it's a perfect analogy, but immigration is like salt. If you add a little immigration, they can make things work better. You get new ideas. You get to get experts in different fields come to your country and do good work and pay lots of taxes. But at a certain point, a certain number, you start to hurt the actual nation. It can't cope. You're forcing people to question what is a nation, what are borders for, also all the things that they took for granted before. And some people are just take the most bizarre positions, when they're forced to question those things. If you want, I can give that Christmas tree analogy that I mentioned when we talked before. I heard in a lecture about this issue. Shall I go for it? Shall I mention it? Well, I heard this lecture from an Israeli lecture, actually. I sometimes listen to Israeli university lectures, and he was talking about the immigration in Europe, and he said he said, what is an identity crisis? Why is Europe in an identity crisis? And he gave a great example, I thought, to illustrate it well. He said, in every European city, they have a Christmas tree every Christmas. Not everybody is Christian. Many people are not really religious. But there's a Christmas tree, and it's a tradition. People are religious, consider it a religious thing. It's the birthday of Jesus.
Well, technically it isn't, but we won't get into that.
Yeah, no, but whatever it is, whatever it means to them religiously, it works for them and they're happy.
Right.
Other people are happy that there's a week of work and they go out with their kids and see some lights, and it's a tradition and so on. It makes them proud of their city and whatever, and nobody really worries about the Christmas tree. But when you have 30-40% Muslim population, it bothers them. And at some point they say it, and they say, why do we have a Christmas tree? This is supposed to be a secular city. Why don't we celebrate Muslim holidays? And now the city is forced to sit down and have a debate about why they have a Christmas tree, something they've been doing for hundreds of years, or for however long they've been doing. And nobody ever questions why they need a Christmas tree. And now you're creating 2 groups in the public. Ones who are, adamant they gotta have this Christmas tree, and another one, that don't want to have a Christmas tree. And you're making people fight over something that was fine before. And it's a great example of how you create identity crisis. You're forcing people to question their identity and what they believe in, and do their neighbors believe in the same things? And I think it's, so. I think Brexit has become a symbol of all that. It's all about Brexit. Brexit has become a bigger thing because there's been a lot of time for people here to debate it and think about it and what it actually means. And it's become bigger than just about the European Union. It became, in my opinion, anti-globalist.
Anti-establishment.
Anti-establishment. Anti the elite, anti the experts, and it could go wrong. It could go really bad because we need the elite, we need the experts as well. It's all about balancing everything. And I'm worried that this left has gone so crazy that it will cause a backlash that won't be nice either. So I just tend to worry anyway. But that's what I worry about. And the fact that Corbyn almost managed to get in, and if you want, I can explain a little. It could be a bit boring, but I could explain how he could have got in this time as well.
Well,
if
we
Forrest
can
didn't
we
get it.
can I think we can do that in just a couple minutes, but I did want to brag a little bit and be a piece of crap because my article came out on December 11th and
I know you
the
literally predicted it.
well, I don't think I'm the only person who predicted it, but I
No,
did predict it as opposed. So this is from Common Dreams, which reprinted an article by Electronic Intifada, which says, "Don't let the smears that St. Corbyn tank Bernie Sanders." And it says, "Labor's worst performance since 1983 carries an important lesson for the grassroots left-wing campaign in the United States. To elect Bernie Sanders as president, you must defeat false anti-Semitism smears at all costs." Now, Asa Winstanley, the person who wrote the article, was actually suspended by the Labor Party for a number of, well, I'm not sure exactly what he said, but he
I
called the
see.
Jewish, it says he called the Jewish labor movement a proxy for the Israeli embassy. So the person who wrote
Right.
this and is being shared by Common Dreams is a person who was part of the whole problem, if you want to call, some people don't look at it as a problem. They think, labor should be, I guess, the, the UK and Palestinian Authority Labor Party instead of just the UK Labor Party. But, these are the people who are making up excuses for this. And these are people who want Jeremy Corbyn to remain as the head of the Labor Party. And I personally am in favor because he's an idiot.
Yes, I mean, he's the best leader. May he stay leader forever.
Yeah, 4 more years, 40 more years. I hope he lives
Yeah.
till, I think that with him, not that I don't think that the Tory party is necessarily doing anything like very amazing besides Brexit,
Yes.
but I guess if the Tories or Labour at this point, I'm not going to support Labour if I was a British person. I'm
Yeah.
presuming a lot because I've never been there. So, but in
Yeah.
any case,
It's a safe presumption. Yeah.
but it says this is the Daily Beast, which is, I guess, center left here in the U.S. It says, what do the UK election results mean for Democrats? Nothing very good. Across the democracies of the developed world, right-wing ethnoculturalism is taking over everywhere. And yes, Boris Johnson, ethnoculturalist. And it says, let's be
Yeah.
careful about hot takes from the UK election. Jeremy Corbyn was a unique nincompoop. He was never suited to be a national leader of a major political party in a major industrial democracy. He was an ineffectual backbencher and should have remained so. So I'm not hot on this is a disaster for Bernie Sanders line. So this person also is doubting it. I can tell you that he should be rethinking that. The result is it because it's actually happening here. Bernie Sanders' campaign is in real trouble right now. Anyway, so he keeps going. He says the result sure isn't good for Sanders, who still has no shortage of his own kinds of limitations, but there are differences between the two men. Sanders has been a backbencher most of his life, too, so that's a fair point of comparison. But when Sanders did rise to the national spotlight, at least he showed he can hold his place in it. Corbyn always looked to me like he was secretly wondering why the bloody hell all these people are suddenly listening to me. Sanders is Jewish and is far from a knee-jerk left-wing, oh no, I'm just an anti-Zionist, anti-Semite of the kind one finds much more frequently on the European left than the American version. So without, I'm not going to read the whole thing, but, I will later, but it sounds like this person is not processing the real problem, which the anti-Semitism is only, it's one aspect of it. Okay, maybe
Anti-Semitism is not important in England, and also because there's been so much talk about Islamophobia, the people don't believe, so they didn't really register this anti-Semitism. Also, there's only a small number of Jews in the UK. It's not like the US. It's not that important, and it doesn't come up really until recently. Obviously, it hasn't really come up. Nobody talks about it. It's considered impolite. The British are quite polite. So
But
yeah,
but
I think it's quite
they're
funny.
ignoring like the bigger problems with
Yes,
Corbyn, which were, he's the other things that they're not talking about, which are things that you're definitely familiar with. He had Diane Abbott as his shadow home secretary, who's just a complete idiot. and
Oh, yeah.
people remember that. He had John McDonnell, who scares people, as his shadow chancellor.
Yeah.
He was always caught lying about the. I mean, yes, some people would say it's okay to lay a wreath at the grave of one of the Munich terrorists. Okay, let's say people think that's okay. Fine. He also lied about it and said he wasn't involved, and there was photographic proof. So it's at some point, their biggest complaint about Boris Johnson is that he's not credible and he lies about stuff. Okay, then Jeremy Corbyn also lies about stuff. So they're equal, if not, I would say Jeremy Corbyn lies on stuff that's more of substance than,
Yes.
whether there's going to be 50 billion pounds for the NHS. He lies
That
about things.
thing is never a lie. This is nonsense. It was never a lie. Nothing on this bus was a lie. It said the amount we give the EU, we could use it for the NHS.
Right.
And yeah, it's a slightly manipulative, but people are not stupid. The trouble with the left is they think everybody's stupid because they don't have a degree in what I call wind studies. They just people are not that stupid. I because of the work I do, I mix with all sorts of people, intellectuals and people who do menial jobs, and people are not stupid. If you stop them, and have a chat with them about politics, if they're interested, they actually listen to a lot of stuff. People listen to podcasts and talk radio and all that while they're driving, their taxis, and while people are switched on. They're not that stupid. And I think Boris tapped into this identity crisis. That's what we kept saying, get Brexit done, because that's code for, I understand your identity crisis. I understand you've had enough immigration. You're worried about the way your country is changing, and all this is registered. And he put it into 3 words: let's get Brexit done.
Mm-hmm.
Which was very smart, as a tactic. I mean, not much more than a tactic, but he definitely understood it. And I think Trump did something very similar in the US.
So do you want to explain, because you mentioned this a little earlier, and then we'll get into some of our other content. What was like I guess the roundabout way that Jeremy Corbyn could have found himself in number 10?
Well, first, Boris Johnson didn't have a majority in Parliament, and he had MPs leaving the party because they disagreed about Brexit. And yeah, so there was a potential that Corbyn would set up a coalition with the other parties, and there was talk of him going to the Queen, which is like the way the constitution here works, to ask her to make him prime minister because he commands the majority in the House. So yeah, there was this potential, and that potential existed still if Boris won but did not get a majority, because it's possible here, the way the system works, to win, to be the largest party but not have a majority, and then I can't see who would have worked with him that would have been large enough. So there was a potential for Corbyn to rise, and there was also potential for a lot of chaos. I'm glad that they got a clear clear majority, because there was potential for a lot of chaos. I was literally ready to leave.
So okay, like when you say that, so I was going to ask you this, I forgot to ask you. When they said there was a poll, I think that, I don't remember what the percentage was, but a large percentage of British Jewish citizens were ready to leave the UK in the event of a Corbyn win. How many people personally do you know who were serious about that?
I don't really know that many Jews. I live in London. I kind of work with mostly people who are not Jewish. If someone happens to be Jewish, so be it. But there may be people who are Jewish that I don't even know are Jewish when I work with them.
Mm-hmm. Maybe they're unconscious Mossad agents. as some people would
Yeah,
say. Yeah.
yeah, and the thing is that there's like anywhere there's all sorts of Jews here. There's Ashkenazi Jews. There's who are secular. There's Ashkenazi Jews who are not secular. They're
There's
religious.
Baghdadi
Within,
Jews.
yeah, there's Sephardi Jews. There's some secular and some are religious, and within those there's various, you know, groups yet again, just like any just like you'd expect, basically. So the ones I tended to see were kind of lefties, really mild lefties, you know.
Mhm.
So they were just like everybody else. London is left, really. I mean, we had Boris as mayor for a while. I don't know how he managed to get in, but he did. He was apparently quite good. I wasn't paying that much attention, but he seems to be um, moderate. The media painted him as far right, like which was ridiculous. Describing as far right, but as you know, anything right of Lenin is apparently far right.
Right. Yeah.
But he's the BBC. I don't know if the BBC called him that, but definitely some publications have uh, in the past called him that. And
So
they keep saying about he made comments about letterboxes, about some Muslim women, the way they dress, they look like letterboxes, and they said that that's racist and all that sort of stuff. They try to stick stuff on him. He said that single parent families produce kids that are more likely to be criminals and you know and things like this, which is a fact. Apparently, he said that because he hates women or something.
yeah, they say that
Um,
it's the same problem we have here. We have people. This is actually a thing that's been going on since the '90s here in the U.S. and I
mm,
remember in I think 1991, and I was probably only 6 years old, but I remember it because it was a big deal. Um, there was the vice president Dan Quayle, who at the
yes,
time
I
I didn't.
remember him.
Yeah, I never. I was like 6 years old, so I didn't care at the time. Nowadays, I'd probably consider him a retard anyway. But he criticized the TV show Murphy Brown because it kind of showed single motherhood in a positive light, and people
Yeah,
were saying, "Oh, he hates women or whatever." And I'm like, "Look, I guess maybe because my mom was divorced and a single mom too, I was like maybe like reading about it later, I was like, this was like a very stupid topic to attack a politician on because he was making a point about the stability of the child's environment at home, even though it's Dan Quayle and he is an idiot. But even
yeah,
morons, you have to sometimes give them credit. And
yeah, exactly.
yeah, so go
I
go
mean,
on.
why would you be hating women? Many of those women are single moms because their man, their husband, their boyfriend is irresponsible and
Yeah, or he
just
abandoned them.
left
Yeah.
them. So that's not hating women. It's saying to a lot of men, be responsible if you have children. Um, I don't see the problem here. It's not. It's like automatically they interpret it as if the women are at fault and Boris is having a go at them. Why are you assuming that all these women who have single children, single moms are at fault? He didn't make the assumption. He just said he said something else. So it kind of reveals where their minds are. I tend to think the left is bigoted, and they just mask their bigotry with virtue signaling. They seem obsessed with race and gender and all those things. I'm a bit older, and I remember living through the 80s and 90s. It seemed like all those things were this kind of um, relations between races were improving. You know, I worked with black people, with white people.
Even the
People
Irish.
didn't really care. Uh, I worked with Irish people. I worked with everyone. It didn't really matter with Scots, with Italians, with Arabs. with Moroccans, with all sorts of people, and it's all great. And so like there was a vibe that this is nice. This is people are not fighting. We're doing stuff together. There was generally a thing. Oh, this is moving in the right direction, and suddenly they kind of said, "Oh, this is the worst time ever for minorities." And I'm thinking, no, it's not. I've been here, an immigrant, a foreigner. People have been really nice to me. Um, I haven't had any problem with anyone. I never felt mistreated or anything. I mean, like, I didn't get it. I just didn't get it. Like, why now? you know, like this, things were moving in the right direction. Why now? I just didn't get it. It seemed, and all this, the same with the feminism. Where finally, women can do everything that they want to do. I see women working everywhere I go. Um, I see women running businesses and running offices and schools and hospitals, what have you. And they're
The
saying
only
this is the
prob the
worst
only
time for
problem
women.
the only problem with women is that sometimes they don't know what they are, as certain female politicians have had problems defining what a woman is. Is that correct?
Yes,
so,
that's a good one. Yes,
so for
she
those of you
doesn't
that
know
don't
what a
know,
woman is.
like
I, I'm a,
I watch Sargon's uploads
yes,
sometimes, and he had this hilarious one where the woman who was the if she is a woman, but she was the leader of the Liberal Democrat Party, which is the top Ramoner party in the UK, and
yes,
a radio listener called into a show that was hosting her, and they asked her what a woman is, and she took honestly like 15 minutes to try to answer, and she couldn't do it. It
yes.
was really funny.
Well, it's a party of feminism, virtue signaling. They're mildly anti-Israel, which is always a red flag. They're anti-democratic. Obviously, people
Right.
voted one way and they said, no, we're just going to scrap it. Not even have another vote. Just now, forget it. You remember that referendum we had to be fighting over for 3 years? Forget it. I mean, how ridiculous can you be?
Yeah,
This-
and one of the funny things, I think you introduced me to his writing, but Rod Little, who is he's not a really a right winger. I'd say he's, I guess, a social.
No,
So he's tried to refound this social democratic party, which originally that was the breakaway party from the Labor Party back in the what's it called in the 1980s under Michael Foot. So he's trying to do it again.
yes. Well, maybe, I don't know. It's very hard to build a party. And I mean, we've got this person you know very well in the US called Nigel Farage, who is like a tornado when he arrives anywhere. He's pretty amazing what this man has done, what he can do. And I mean, he set up this Brexit party. I mean, he created parties. He took a weird party and turned it into a force, UKIP. And then he set up a new party called the Brexit Party and turned it into a major force. And now he's setting up another one.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, he's calling it the Reform Party, and he wants to reform stuff, make the country more democratic or something. We'll see what he wants to do. There's a couple of things. Actually, I don't know how long we've got, but a couple of things I did want to mention. One is the Jewish thing here in the UK, and well, we'll talk about that first. So if you don't mind,
Yeah. Go ahead.
what I've noticed here, I follow, try to follow as much as possible. I work. The job I do allows me to listen to stuff. So I can't watch a lot, but I can listen. I listen to however much I can, and I noticed the conversation here is very influenced by what I call the new Anglosphere. I believe a new Anglosphere is kind of developing because of the internet. A lot of people who watch Sargon are not British, even though he talks about mostly British issues. I mean, he did talk about Trump for a while, but it
Mhm.
tends to be focused on this country. But I know a lot of Americans watch him, and he talks to a lot of Americans. I think there seems to be a sphere of some sort developing where, as long as you speak English, it doesn't matter where you're from. You know, as long as it's from, not exactly right, but as long as you're from the English, the countries that are in the English tradition that have that to them. You know, like Canada, Australia, uh, the US as well. There seems to be a dialogue opening. And anyway, the dialogue is very much influenced by Americans. And of course, America has a large Jewish population, and most of the population there votes traditionally left. Although I think a lot of them are drifting right at the moment.
Mhm.
But in the UK, it's a different picture completely. The Jews have always voted conservative. They've always been to the right. Even when the country here voted overwhelmingly for Labour, for Tony Blair's Labour, I tried to look it up, and I think the Jews were 50-50, you know, at the height of Labour here. And
Well,
they,
so my article actually does mention this briefly that Corbyn might have wrecked a lot of his. I mean, it's not really that big of a deal because, like you said, it's not a very, very big
exactly.
slice of the pie. But in 2010, there was an even split between the Tories and Labour during the election that brought David Cameron to power, and Gordon Brown was the prime minister before that. So I think it's I personally
Well,
yeah,
what,
go
an
ahead.
even split among the Jews, you mean, between
Yeah,
Labour
yeah,
and...
in terms of
Oh,
between
what?
Tories and Labor.
Where did you get that stat? Because I saw that when Miliband was leader, he got a very low Jewish vote,
Well,
something
this
like
was this was when
25%.
Gordon Brown was running.
Oh, and
So
Gordon
this
Brown.
is
Okay.
I have it on the screen. The Institute for Jewish Policy Research from April 2010, the political leanings
Okay.
of Britain's Jews, and
Okay. Okay.
so at the
I've seen a
time it
few
said,
studies, a few stats, and they tend to be that the British are slightly more conservative than the British Jews are slightly more conservative than the general population.
well, it has
This time,
it,
obviously, they all voted against Corbyn.
yeah. So they had 31% for Labor in 2010, 30% Conservative, 11% Lib Dem, and then there were other ones, undecided, other. I would not vote. I would prefer not to say. I'd be
Okay,
interested if there were any who voted for UKIP at the time, but
there's,
you know,
there's, there's a couple of things with these stats as well. I mean, what they consider here the Jewish community and actual Jews is two different things. I mean, they don't know someone like me exists. In fact, I know a few Israelis who live in London, and there's a body here called the Jewish Board of Deputies. Apparently, it's very important. None
mhm,
of us knew we've lived here for 20, 30 years. We never heard of it.
right.
Only recently someone mentioned it on Facebook, and I said, "Oh, you're not a member." I said, "What is it?"
Well, that's the
you
same
know,
problem that we have here. We have here the Jewish federations, and we have the ADL, and there's people who live
But it's not only that. It's not only that. But a lot of Jews don't live in the traditionally Jewish areas,
right.
and so I don't know who are the Jews that they're asking. And I wouldn't be surprised if they're going to synagogues and asking people outside synagogues, and that would not be a true sample of the Jewish population here at all. Um, so I don't know how they obtain this data, whether they phone people, how do they know they're Jewish? I mean, there's no registration of Jews here. I don't really know. So I've never been asked. I've
So
never
so
been
it
asked for
has
my
it has
vote
a
for any Jewish
survey.
body.
It has a survey details. So I don't think this is a really scientific survey because it says the data was
Yeah.
gathered using an online questionnaire during the months of January and February 2010 as part of the Israel Survey 2010, the attitudes and attachments of Jews in Britain. This still to be completed nationwide survey was commissioned by the Peers Foundation and conducted by JPR, Ipsos, MORI, which is a British polling agency, advised on questionnaire development and managed the data collection process. The analysis and interpretation of results have been done exclusively by JPR respondents self-identified as being Jewish, living in Britain, and aged 18. So it could be some dude that maybe listened to a Matisyahu album and was like, yeah, fuck yeah, I'm Jewish. So things like that happen.
But it's also where the questionnaire was published, how it was advertised.
Right.
I've never heard of this questionnaire. None of my friends mentioned it. You know what I mean? So,
Well, it could
um,
be. I mean, in
I-
some of these like Yoili communities, the ones who are like really, Hasidic Jews, they're not gonna, they're gonna be like questionnaire. It's like I'm not
they're not
answering
going to
the,
go
the
online. They
yeah,
don't
they,
go
they don't go
online only to
online. They're
approve.
gonna they're just gonna go to their, I don't know what they do, their yeshiva,
They,
and sit
they
down
have their
and
own. They have like a filter that they install with the rabbis approve which sites they go to. They wouldn't go to some questionnaire site for university or something like that.
yeah, they would have to
Um,
be found by a researcher in person. So
yes.
it could be, it's possible that those people could vote for one of these parties at a higher rate than the survey shows, but I think
I'm
it's
pretty sure. I'm pretty
yeah.
sure. I know that this election, Labour got something like 8%, and I think the previous election they got something like 16 or 20 from the Jews. I could be wrong, but I've seen various people put up various stats. I think all stats about Jewish people in this country are going to be a bit difficult because there's so few Jews. I don't know. I think they tend to go to community centers. Um, there's an area called Golders Green where there's a lot of Jews live there. I live far from it,
Mhm.
and I just don't think that we can get a really good data unless you use quite a few polls. But that's my impression from all the things I've seen published is that the Jewish people here vote slightly more to the right, and in this election, definitely more to the right. There was even a video of Boris visiting Golders Green or
Oh, I saw
the
that video,
nearby,
but yeah, go
and
ahead. You
yeah,
want me to play it?
yeah, you could. I mean, the one guy shouting to him, "Save us, Boris! Save us from this man!"
Yeah, that was so funny. I guess it was funny, but also a
It's
little like
sad,
a
really.
little unsettling.
Well,
So
think about it. The guy has kids here. Probably has family. He might have elderly parents here as well. These people are here many generations. They've not just arrived. They might have a business. They might have a job. um, it's it's not easy to just leave. And they
so
were really scared because it's not that they're scared that they're going to be they're going to be gas chambers and all that sort of stuff, but they just don't want to live in a place where there's all this bad energy for their children to grow up in.
so I just sent you the video on your Hangouts window, the other one. But
Okay.
I just want to say, I mean, whether you're pro-Zionist or not, I think the sentiment that Mr. Afikoman is talking about with Afikoman, by the way, is the Passover thing where they hide the matzah for the kids to find, and then they get a present. So
Yeah.
just so people know, not the matzah that Jeremy Corbyn's fans
Yeah.
are talking about, the one that was used with the blood of children or something. But
No.
but in any
No. No. One
case,
you can buy in the supermarket.
so yeah, so Boris Johnson. So anyway, the idea that these people would want to leave Britain because Jeremy Corbyn is saying these things, and Jeremy Corbyn defines himself as an anti-Zionist and not an anti-Semite, and a lot of these people would probably migrate to Israel. Unfortunately for Jeremy Corbyn, it sort of validates the premise that there might have to be an Israel because of people like him. You know, because if he thinks that he's actually giving a cogent argument why the Jewish people should live in a country where a lot of people consider them to be conniving bankers who hate Palestine and would kill as many people as possible and white phosphorus and stuff like that, then
Yes.
he's actually like I don't know if he's like self-aware enough to realize it, but when you send out messages the way he does, people start to listen and say, "Hey, I might have to get the hell out of here." But anyway, I can. Do you have the video ready to play? Because I'm ready to play it. It's kind of a funny video.
Okay, yes.
All right, press play.
Let's read.
Who else can I get to the jam then? Who wants that? Yeah. Who wants that? I've almost said it. I haven't been able to get it. Jammed it. Time for jam then. I'll just have a small one. Boris.
So that was a shorter video than the one I saw, but
oh yes, because the next thing is someone says to him is, "Boys, save us from this man. I'm leaving if he's elected."
yeah,
So Boris says
see.
something like, "We're trying."
Let me see. There's a video that's like 2 minutes long, which is much more.
Did you see the video where they're giving people quoting quotes, but telling them that Boris Johnson or someone from his party said them?
The one with Joseph Cohn, I think.
Yes, and they say, "Oh, this is terrible," and then he says to them, "Well, this is Jeremy Corbyn," and then they kind of try to wiggle
they
their
get a
way
little
out.
like twisted in knots about it.
Yes,
it's pretty funny. I can't find the full video, but it was pretty funny. But because like it's Boris Johnson and he's a goofy motherfucker, but also because like people are like lining up for donuts like crazy. It was pretty funny. But it is. I mean, it's almost Hanukkah season, so I'm sure some people are buying donuts,
exactly,
but it's not quite yet Hanukkah. It's only there's another week left. So I was like, what's with the donuts? But maybe they were going just because of him or something. They heard, oh, Boris is going to be here.
It could be. He's very liked by the Jewish community anyway here because he's just a friendly guy. He's liked by working people. I mean, most of the Jewish people here are not bankers.
Right.
They just work. They just have jobs or businesses, mostly small shops and small businesses. Yes, some of them make a lot of money. But most of them, are just normal people, and that's his gift. He relates to normal people. He relates to, the plumbers and the taxi drivers and the builders and all those sorts of people.
So, segueing to a topic that you brought up earlier, you did say that you think that an anti-Israel politician is typically, you'd say that you consider it a rule that they're not really a credible person, or can you phrase it in brief how you put it?
I always put it as a joke. I say that the hate of Israel is the tip of the shitberg that is their soul.
Okay.
But it's a visible portion of the nonsense that they're hiding, and if you just look around, you'll find it.
So I have here. This is from the George Marshall Foundation. So General Marshall was the highest ranked Army officer in American history, and it was actually told in 2014 or 15 when Benjamin Netanyahu spoke before Congress. He mentioned that Marshall was not supportive of the recognition of the State of Israel in 1948. And, people took that to mean that George Marshall was an anti-Semite. But there's actually a paper that outlines that, for, whether valid or not, Marshall was arguing that it's not a practical foreign policy position to recognize Israel. He from a military standpoint, and remember, George Marshall was the supreme Allied commander in World War II. So it's not like he was talking out of his ass. He believed that it would be impossible for the Jews or the Israelis to win in 1948, and by winning that would mean survive against the Arab armies that would invade. And therefore he said, well, we just shouldn't, as Secretary of State, he said we shouldn't vote in the UN to recognize the new state. And he got into a heated argument with President Truman's advisor, Clark Clifford. And the nature of that argument is somewhat disputed, but apparently at one point he said that if President Truman were to decide to go against his advice, he would resign and support someone else in the election the next year. So, with that information in mind, obviously
Mhm.
I've kind of explained it. It's not exactly a clear-cut position. Would you say
Yeah.
that this is a person who fits within your rule?
Yeah, I'd say that first he was wrong, wasn't he?
Well, yeah,
Because
and in the
they did
event,
manage.
so it says that later he did speak to some people and he said, look, the way it looked to me from a military standpoint, it didn't look like it was possible for them to win.
Well, so it shows he didn't understand what was going on there. He was either misinformed or he misunderstood. I believe he was quite a busy man at the time. I know that he's a serious man, and I know I actually heard a program about him, and I know that he's done a lot of good in the world as well. But I can forgive that because I can see where it was coming from, and it was a new thing. And I'm talking today. I'm
Right.
talking, in modern, in kind of more modern times. I can see his position, and I wouldn't. I think it'd be interesting to see what he thought after, and whether he was like, no, we shouldn't be friends with Israel. Israel is evil, and they're
So
killing the
how do you
Palestinian
how do you
children and all
define
that sort of stuff.
how do you define these politicians? Because there are people who are, the prime minister of Malaysia has said, look, I'm anti-Semitic. I mean, come on, I'm not going to that's what he said. He said that anti-Semitism is fine. I think his name is Mahathir Muhammad, and he was like, look, I'm laying it on the table. I don't really see this as a problem, and if you have a problem with that, sue me, basically. And it was the same thing with Ahmadinejad, but obviously Malaysia is not necessarily in a strategic conflict with Israel, which kind of raises the question why he cares so much. But
Exactly. It's a sign that it's a sign that he's bad news. I don't know enough about him, but I don't. He's unlikely to be good news. That's what I would say. And I use this for Western politicians. I use it for UK politicians, for US politicians. Um, I don't know the politics of Malaysia, if they even have proper politics. It is
well,
a Muslim country, right?
well, I think it's better to. I think you raise an important problem because, I personally I think that people should be treated the same. I don't think that we should just, I don't think, for example, when the media treated Vladimir Putin as the devil for 3 years, I think that was tremendously unfair, even though he's certainly done some really retarded and bad things. But,
Mm.
I think what I see as the real issue is that you have a lot of these universities that have a deep verbal commitment to fighting prejudice and racism and everything, and yet I'm showing on the screen. I don't know if you can see it, but this is from the Columbia Spectator, which is the daily newspaper of Columbia University in Manhattan, and they hosted. Columbia, I think, has the most prestigious foreign what do you call it? Uh, the School for Foreign Affairs, I guess it's called. So they have the
Yes.
most prominent one in the U.S., except maybe Georgetown. I'm not sure. It's up there anyway.
Yes.
and
Yes.
and a lot of them end up going to the State Department from Columbia and from some of these other Ivy League schools. They go to the State Department. They might go to the CIA, and the graduates and Mahathir Muhammad was who's 94 years old. He was welcomed there in September, despite pronouncing a lot of things where he said that anti-Semitism is fine. And this is in Columbia University, where there's plenty of Jewish students, and also the city of New York obviously has a pretty large Jewish population, and yet Columbia didn't have any problem with inviting Mahathir Muhammad. And I personally, I'm a freedom of speech absolutist. I don't
Yeah.
have a problem with it, but I'm saying the policies that they're talking about of preventing bigotry on campus. If the person who had said those things had been some some white guy from Kansas who had visited Columbia University, they would have kicked him off campus. So,
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
I think that there's a different,
Well, that's
obviously,
bigotry, isn't it? They don't expect someone from the lowly Malaysia to have their standards.
right. So I think that there is certainly, the policy can't be consistent. And that's why, I actually wrote something. I don't know if it's going to be published this week or not, but, in pointing out some critical problems with the Trump executive order on anti-Semitism, which is, in my opinion, I don't think you can stop anti-Semitism with the law. I think you have to do it through rhetoric and debate if you can, and you still can't stop everything. You just have to sort of, make the case to the people that are reasonable, and everyone else can go fuck themselves. But what's
No, you
going
don't
on
stop
with
anti-Semitism with law, but I think that the fact that Trump is, I think Trump gets it. I'm very impressed with Trump. I think he's been really good.
I
don't
think
care what
I think he
people say.
understands it. I just don't think it's like, I don't think the solution is a solution. I think it's just
Well, there's no solution, but I think we talked about it before. But I think Trump simply recognized the fact Jews are a nation. They're a people. They're not a religion. It doesn't even make grammatical sense to say Jews are a religion. Judaism is a religion that was traditionally the religion of Jewish people, but they're still a nation. If I'm born to a Jewish family and tomorrow I decide, okay, I'm not religious anymore, it doesn't stop me being Jewish. It doesn't stop people considering me Jewish. It wouldn't have stopped Hitler, hating me and sending me to one of those camps. And people still think I'm Jewish. It doesn't matter. They don't ask me if I believe in God. They just think I'm Jewish. So I'm Jewish. So it's obviously a nation thing. Always has been. The Jews consider themselves a nation. They call themselves Am Israel, which means the people of Israel, not the people of God or something like that. So he just recognizes the fact, doesn't he?
I think this could be the basis for a separate discussion, possibly next week,
True.
because I'll send you, if I get published my article, I'll send it to you, of course, and then if it isn't published, I'll publish it on my own blog and I'll send it to you anyway. And I'll, I do address that point as well. So
just to go back to that Malaysian dude, I mean, I have no problem with someone saying whatever they want to say. What worries me is that this explosion. I mean, don't forget, there's only one Jewish state. There's so many people that they let speak, and then there's 50 or more Muslim states that really, really hate Israel and hate Jews, and they're obsessed. Many of them are obsessed with Jews, and it's also a political tool because they use it to, just like politicians in the US use various things, as a scapegoat. That's the reason we have problems. Politicians in the Arab world for 60, 70 years have been telling the population, the reason your car doesn't work is because of the Jews. The reason it didn't rain this year is because of the Jews. Literally as crazy as that. And they blame everything, economic problems, prices of oil, anything that goes
climate
wrong.
change.
Anything, literally anything. They even blame Israel for earthquakes, for no rain, for lack of rain.
Well, I did a video on this.
It's just insane.
Over a year ago, where
but just my point is, just to finish my point, is that they are funding a huge campaign. Don't forget, Qatar has a lot of money. The Saudis have tons of money, and they spend. They're obsessed with it. I mean, Qatar spends billions on anti-Israeli propaganda. They set up Al Jazeera for that aim. I'm amazed that all these universities are supposed to be intellectual people, smart people. They're such suckers for this campaign of anti-Israeli and anti-Jewish propaganda. Fair enough, let people speak, but there seems to be an emphasis on that. There seems to be a lot of anti-Israel nonsense coming from universities, a lot of communism, Marxism, postmodernism, all sorts of bad isms, bad isms coming from universities these days. That's another topic, isn't it? I mean,
Right. So we're not going to do Al Jazeera today because, frankly, I don't have any respect for Al Jazeera, but I do like
oh,
watching RT once in a while. So this is a clip. I just sent it to you in your Hangouts window with Chris Williamson from the British Labour Party, and we're gonna watch. 7 minutes long.
okay,
So let's try to get through it. I'm gonna try not to interrupt, but
feel free.
but then the comments are really pretty funny. So I was actually talking to you about it offline, but so Chris Williamson, before we start, I believe he was suspended for a period. I don't know if he's been reinstated by the Labour Party for some
I think
statements.
he has. He's called Voldemort.
Okay, well, good for him. So, so anyway, back to work, doing whatever the hell he is doing. But so we're gonna talk. We're gonna talk a little bit about him and some of the comments of people on this, and it gives you a kind of a window to the mind of the Corbyn supporters, the people who have been, I guess, they're like, well, I mean, I don't see what the problem is with this guy. But what did Williamson say? I kind of forgot what his
I
issue was.
forgot.
So I'm gonna
I
look it
mean,
up real quick. But I
it's not,
think
it's like all this what people say and stuff, but I think this guy is another anti-Israel obsessive. Palestinian flagging, flag waving. He wants to recognize Palestine. He keeps talking about all this stuff. I mean, he's one of the hardcore anti-Israel people. So the more anti-Israel you are, the crazier you are, especially for this country. I mean, this obsession.
so. He's actually been voted out apparently in Derby North.
Yes,
I think he lost his seat to Amanda Soloway, who's a Tory, and he actually gained his seat back in 2017, which is it makes sense because the Tories lost. That was a huge, like, I mean, I think Theresa May is the person to blame for everything going on right now because she was such a
yes,
incompetent moron. She was the previous prime minister before Johnson, for those of you that have not followed British politics. But she won. She edged what's his name? Or actually, no. I think Chris Williamson didn't even run this time, so it's not his fault that the Tories won it. But yeah, he was suspended. Let me find this.
yes. He was. I can't remember. I just remember that he's bad news. There
So
was a
he
story about
said
him doing something.
so in 2017, Williamson said that attacks on Corbyn's handling of alleged anti-Semitism within the Labour Party were, quote, proxy wars and bullshit, and that, quote, I am not saying it ever happens, but it is a really dirty, low down trick, particularly the anti-Semitism that smears. Many people in the Jewish community are appalled by what they see as the weaponization of anti-Semitism for political ends. Marie van der Sil, the Board of Deputies vice president, said that Williamson should, quote, show solidarity with those suffering racism within his own party rather than blaming the victims. Williamson described anti-Semitism as being, quote, utterly repugnant and a scourge on society, which is why I stand in absolute solidarity with anyone who is subjected to anti-Semitic abuse. He added that his critics, quotes, accusations of anti-Semitism against him were positively sinister and highly offensive and hurtful in suggesting that I was an anti-Semite myself, yet I have fought racism all my adult life. In April
Yeah.
2018, Williamson referenced Ken Livingstone, saying, we've got these ridiculous suspensions and expulsions from the party made in the most grotesque and unfair way, supporting Len McCluskey, who's the head of the Unite Union, who had accused some Labour MPs of using the issue of anti-Semitism in campaigning against Corbyn. He described some of his colleagues as, quote, malcontents who were completely out of step with party members and voters, but that deselection of MPs was a matter for Labour Party members in each constituency and not a matter for me or indeed Len. In January 2019, during a visit to Derbyshire, Jeremy Corbyn defended Williamson, saying that Chris Williamson is a very good, very effective Labour MP. He's a very strong anti-racist campaigner. He is not anti-Semitic in any way. So I don't know. I think I don't see any real. I mean, I think he's just, I guess, a little defensive, but I don't see really the issue right now. But I think that this video is kind of funny. If you want to start watching it.
Yeah. Let's go. Say when.
Yeah, go ahead.
Your constituency, they've just declared, haven't they? I mean, what do you make of the result?
Yeah, well, it's a devastating night for the Labour Party, but I think the origins of our demise can be traced back to, I think, the really rather sort of absurd position that the party adopted on Brexit. That certainly didn't help. And one of the things I was arguing for, that Labour should have, as we did in the 2017 election, accept the outcome of the referendum and focus on our vision for Britain outside the European Union. And we are the 5th biggest economy in the world, let's remember, with our own sovereign currency. So there's a lot that I think we could have done, and we could have focused on a people's Brexit. And what we allowed ourselves to be sort of manipulated into a position where Boris Johnson was able to portray himself. Boris Johnson, of all people, a former Bullingdon Club member, as the anti-establishment figure. And that's a terrible position for the Labour Party to have got itself into. But I think the other thing which has been very unhelpful, I think, is the momentum behind the movement that propelled Labour to the biggest increase in vote share since 1945. That was dissipated. There was a focus on the smears against the Labour Party, against key activists within the Labour Party. That was accepted as if it was true when it wasn't. These are absolutely outrageous smears. That resulted in many people being suspended and expelled from the Labour Party. That demoralised the movement. The sense of energy and purpose that was around in the 2017 election was not really apparent in this election. And myself, I was forced into a situation where I had to fight the election in Derby North as the pro-Corbyn independent candidate. A ridiculous position for us to be in.
Well, that's what I was going to say. I mean, we've just seen pictures of Boris Johnson there arriving at 10 Downing Street. In the meantime, though, as you said, you had to run as an independent. Does it leave a bitter taste in your mouth? And also, where does your party go now?
Well, I hope that the party will now acknowledge the error of its position in terms of Brexit, focus on a progressive socialist alternative. I mean, the policy agenda that the Labour Party adopted was overwhelmingly popular. Where we failed to do, I think, is to kind of communicate that effectively. And I think that was because we've got sidetracked over Brexit, we got sidetracked over internal divisions. And as I've already said, that demoralised the movement. That sense of energy and purpose that was around previously, as I've said, was not there.
Doesn't that also come from the leadership as well? Does that not come from the top? And also, therefore, what's going to happen with Jeremy Corbyn now? What's happening to the leadership?
Well, I think Jeremy was the best Prime Minister that Britain never had. I think had he had the opportunity to get into number 10, he would have been the greatest reforming Prime Minister that this country had ever seen. But unfortunately, he listened too much to the siren voices inside the parliamentary Labour Party. I think his advisers were not up to the job. The Labour Party's bureaucracy is completely broken. And those are areas I think the party needs to focus on. I was arguing for greater democracy, to put our members in the driving seat. At the end of the day, the Labour Party belongs to its members. It doesn't belong to the Parliamentary Labour Party. It doesn't belong to the bureaucrats who sit in the head office. But they seem to have got the power relationship completely the wrong way round. They occupy a bubble and are completely out of touch with the reality. And I think we need to therefore democratise the Labour Party.
Well, Chris,
members are greater.
In terms of power, then, going forward, can we just say, who would you see taking over the Labour Party? You've said that the party belongs to the people, but people, as you said, needs a leader. They needed that direction. Who would you see as the leader for the new Labour Party going forward?
Well, I'm not even sure yet who has been returned to Parliament. It's been a devastating night for the Labour Party. Stalwarts of the Labour movement, like Dennis Skinner, have lost their seat. Laura Pidcock was a potential candidate for the Labour leadership. She's lost her seat, sadly, as well. Laura Smith, another great socialist MP, has lost her seat in Crewe and Nantwich. So it's difficult, really. So let's sort of take stock and see what the devastation has actually wrought on the Labour Party and see who who the runners and riders are. My problem was really with the Parliamentary Labour Party. A large proportion of it was totally unfit for purpose. They never got behind the Labour leader. They never respected the democratic decision of the party membership. They treated members with contempt. They occupy a Westminster bubble, and they frankly need to get real. Unity is strength. It's an old Labour movement maxim, but they didn't seem to be able to observe it.
And in terms of getting real, how do you therefore see a future for yourself? Do you see a way back into the party for yourself?
Well, let's see. I mean, I'm a member of the Labour movement, and the movement's bigger than the Labour Party. The Labour Party is, if you like, the political wing of the movement. I'm a member of the Labour movement. I consider obviously a socialist, a Labour activist. I'll be taking stock on my next step. I have a meeting early next week. I think there is a need for a new movement. John Lansman has utterly failed in his leadership of Momentum. That, frankly, was a huge opportunity, I think, to really, drive the party forward, to build a mass movement. But I'm afraid he ended up becoming one of the witchfinder generals, focusing on the anti-Semitism smears which were thrown around long-standing anti-racists, many of whom are long-standing anti-racist Jewish members of the Labour Party who were accused of anti-Semitism. And we got sidetracked with these side shows, really, got sidetracked into accepting the kind of absurd Brexit position.
Well, Chris,
and so
I was just going to ask you that very finally.
As they put democracy centre stage.
Very briefly, Chris, if you wouldn't mind, where does this leave Brexit now? Very briefly, if you don't mind.
Well, I think now, obviously, Boris Johnson's got a majority. I think there is a real appetite, there's a weariness in the public at large. People are desperate to see some sort of resolution. My fear, of course, is that we'll see a banker's Brexit, a Brexit of deregulation and trade deals with the United States, and the possibility of more privatisation of the National Health Service and other public services going to avaricious American healthcare companies and the like. That's the worry. And what we need, therefore, it seems to me, to do in the Labour movement is to try and bring people together in the movement and really to expose the Tory party with a view to ensuring that whenever the next general election comes along, we're in a strong position to be able to be competitive in that and hopefully turn things around. But I fear for the future. I think Brexit will happen now, but I fear for the type of Brexit that we're going to see under Boris Johnson.
Oh man, can you hear me still?
Hear you. 1 second, let me unmute myself.
Why can't I hear you?
Yeah, you can hear me now.
Yes. I can comment a few things. I mean,
okay. So before you comment, was there anything he said that you think was valid criticism of the Labour Party and its connection to the voters? And then you can, go of course to some of the statements he made about Momentum and about the anti-Semitism charges, but I guess I want to put that out front first.
No, that's not what I was going to talk about. I mean, you have to understand he's using code words, right?
Okay.
When he's saying more democracy, what he means is give more power to the membership, because the membership is the hardcore far leftist gang that took over the party.
Okay.
But when he talks about the parliament, the Parliamentary Labour Party, he's talking about the members of Parliament who are the elected people that were actually elected by the democratic process. To be a member of the Labour Party, all you do is you send a few pounds and you become a member.
So let me pause.
So
there.
He's playing with words. He's saying democratic when it actually means more power to me.
Let me pause there. So there's an interesting parallel there. So here in the U.S., people are saying that the Democratic Party, for example, is not democratic because the nomination process involves superdelegates who are only, they're automatically chosen from elected members of the Democratic Party or bigwigs or former politicians and things like that. So in a certain way, what Williamson says will resonate with a lot of people who are dissatisfied with, here in the U.S. with the Democratic Party. But you raise an interesting point.
No, they're misunderstanding. When he says the more democratic, he's talking about the membership.
Right. But
a very left-wing kind of hijack of the Labour Party, and he's not talking about the people who vote for Labour normally.
Right. So the fact is that there's a lot of people who vote Labour who, for example, they elected Kate Hoey, who's a former Labour Party member of parliament who was a very Brexit oriented member of
You
parliament.
don't have to go as far as that. You can just go. Most of the members of the party, MPs,
Right.
are not part of Corbyn's gang.
Yeah. But
right?
they are voted by the constituents in their I mean
Exactly,
they
but
represent constituents, so they are democratically elected.
exactly,
And they're not
and he's calling them.
they're not there
He's
to
calling them
represent
undemocratic.
Yeah, they're not there to represent Jeremy Corbyn. They're there to represent
Exactly.
the residents of Stoke-on-Trent. And it's the same issue here. I mean, I think sometimes people here, they go overboard. They say, oh, these politicians are not loyal to Trump when they're talking about a certain congressman or something. Especially a lot of people, I get really frustrated. They talk about Tom Massey of Kentucky, who always votes against defense spending. And the fact is that Tom Massey gets elected by a huge majority every time in Kentucky because he's against spending on the military and on anything. So, oh, he's a Republican. He's supposed to vote for whatever Trump says. No, he's Trump doesn't pick these people to be the candidate for whatever district it is. In fact, here in the U.S. we have an even more democratic nomination process in some cases than in Britain. I mean, we could use more parties, but so anyway, keep going as far as other remarks that Mr. Williamson said.
Well, I mean, what you can see is that they're all blaming each other and the rest of the world for losing, because that's what they always do. I mean, Hillary did the same. It's the people, they're deplorable. It's the Russians. It's the universe. I can't remember all the things she blamed, and even there, they're blaming the Israel, the Zionists, whatever that means.
So if you look at
they're blaming Russia. They're blaming.
Good thing you brought that up, because some of the in the chat it says, so there's these people who are saying time for a proper socialist party. Somebody says
socialism is dead.
Yeah, it's this one 2 days ago said can't beat the Zionists on elections. And then somebody else is like, there's people who are heckling them. This one guy says it's the giant lizards who live under the oceans and secret caves you need to worry about.
Oh, God.
It says
I don't know if
here,
they're joking or they're serious.
No, I think some people are I guess, they probably don't even support Israel. They just, they're frustrated with Corbyn at this point. And then, there's a few things I give Corbyn credit for a few things. First of all, was that he did not support, the bombing of Syria, which I was against. Another thing was Julian Assange. And then, I did. But so, I'm not somebody who's going to be so unfair. I'm going to say, hey, I never agreed with anything he said. But in terms of.
It's not about that. It's about the person, the fact that he occasionally makes the right decision is not the point. I mean, the guy is just not very smart. He doesn't know much. He's aligned with the wrong people. He doesn't love his country. He's not a patriot.
And he surrounds himself with other morons like Abbott and Emily Thornberry is also a moron. I forgot to talk about her.
Of course, yes.
She's one of the dumbest politicians I've ever seen.
She is, and yeah, that's what he's got around him, because the rest of the party, doesn't agree with him. There's only a few people who agree with him in the actual parliamentary party, which is the elected people, rather than people who just join the party by filling a form. If you're a hardcore leftist these days, you fill in the form and there you are. You've got to vote, and you're going to vote for Corbyn or the next crazy person. One thing I wanted to mention, actually, and you may want to watch this video Sargon did. It kind of ties with this Israel thing, right? I think based on this anti-Israel rule, it is from today. Yes, based on this anti-Israel rule that I have, I've noticed that a lot of Irish people here are very anti-Israel,
right?
Including prominent people in the media. There's one person called James O'Brien.
Oh, he is the guy from LBC.
Yes.
Okay.
O'Brien. It's an Irish name, and I've noticed that the Irish are very, very anti-Israel, and I've started making the connection. Anti-Israel is actually anti-Britain. These people don't like this country. Now, of course, not all the Irish. I actually work with a very patriotic Irish family here. We're not like that at all. So, I'm not trying to smear all Irish, but there's definitely a strong Irish kind of anti-Israel, anti-America, socialist-leaning thing. If you look at Liverpool, which is what the video that Sargon made is about, he noticed it too. Finally, he noticed, and you see the connection. I think that people are anti-Israel, anti-West, basically. And that's
I think
what
that
it boils down to. And just to finish the point,
yeah,
there are 6 million Irish people in the UK.
mm-hmm.
There are many of them are dual nationality. Many are in the media here. The socialist. A lot of them are socialist. One of the cities that has the highest Irish population is Liverpool, and Liverpool voted 75% for Corbyn.
Uh-huh.
It's very unusual for the rest of, they don't normally get such a huge majority when they lose everywhere else. So there's definitely this Irish thing, and there's which like Corbyn appeals to, and there's another population we haven't mentioned today, which is the Muslim population, which is very much subscribed to Corbyn. They voted for him in large numbers, and the other migrants here of of note, Sikhs and Hindus, and they vote conservative generally. So there's this Irish thing to pay attention to here as well.
Well, I think generally. So you bring up a separate issue, which I think, I personally I have no problem with the Irish either. I think that especially
of course not.
Yeah, in the U.S. we have there's 36 million people with Irish heritage here in the U.S. and there's only 3 million people living in the Republic of Ireland today because Ireland, it doesn't have natural resources or any other thing that can sustain a modern economy. So, I actually, I love the Irish, but the fact is Ireland is a traditionally left-wing country, first of all, and also the solidarity between the Irish Republican cause and the far left is something that's gone on for a very, very long time. People forget, or people have never learned, which is, I'm kind of a nerd, but if you
IRA, PLO,
yes,
buddies.
That not only that. Now the PLO, obviously you're very familiar with it. The IRA in the 1960s was it became basically a Marxist organization to the point that there were the majority of the IRA guerrillas in Northern Ireland started to say, well, we're focusing more on this Marxist bullshit and we aren't killing enough British soldiers. So we're going to break away and found a less Marxist IRA, which was the Provisional IRA. And then they eventually became very, very Marxist too under Gerry Adams and then they're
Corbyn's mate.
Right.
Corbyn's friend.
So the thing is, I think that there's a really strange obsession with Marxism in Ireland too that people don't seem to be very interested in. But I think that when I look at these comments, Chris Williamson, I think is I don't think that he's lying here because this is what he really believes, and I'm glad that RT, by the way, I think RT is a good place to go because they interview these people and they say what they really believe, which is why I like watching RT.
One more point. I was trying to finish. One more point. All these people, they're not just anti-Israel, they're anti-America. They don't like America. They hate Trump, but they don't like America. The only American president they approve of is Obama, but even then, they don't like America. They don't like what America stands for. They don't like the capitalism. They think America is super capitalist. They don't even realize it's not. It's just anti-West. It feels like they've been captured by the KGB brainwashed and returned back to their homes.
Yeah, I think that a lot of them are
Unfortunately.
actually they're spouting a lot of like the same. It's I'm not trying to be hyperbolic. A lot of them are using exactly the same type of propaganda that was used in the USSR against Israel
Yes,
during the Cold War, which was
yes,
that was USSR strategy. I'm not some person who's a paranoid anti-Russia person. It's just a fact. I could show you some. I'm going to type this in so you guys are
oh
going to
yeah,
hear.
I
So
mean the
Soviet
connection,
the Soviet Union
you know.
had a lot of they loved, and some of these cartoons, you guys are going to kind of laugh at me for saying this, but these Russians can draw. So there's this one where they show a Jewish soldier. So these are from it looks like this one might be from the 1960s from this woman. I guess it's a woman. So V Konstantinova. Um, Here's another one. It says, "Жизненное пространство." I don't know what that means.
I
I can
don't.
only read Russian. I don't understand what it says. Which, by
I'm
the way,
like that with
I
Arabic.
think it's good for people to look at especially get educated about Russia because it's a country
Oh
that
yeah, I mean, the
yeah
funniest thing is to listen to American right wingers spout KGB propaganda and think that they are telling me something new, and they're literally telling me KGB propaganda from the '60s, and they tell me all these stories with conviction about the USS Liberty and all this sort of stuff, and it's like, oh my God, not this again. I thought we,
Well,
you know
I
what I mean?
actually I've read three books like in the past month about the USS Liberty, and it's very I mean, it's an interesting topic, and I think that there was certainly Israel was culpable, obviously, for what happened, but the fact
Yes,
that people think that this is something that should have
means something.
implications for today, I think is laughable. They don't care about anything else that happened in 1967. They don't seem
Yes,
to it's like the thing that they never like. I personally, I mean, me and you have talked about this offline. I don't believe in foreign aid, not to Israel, not to any country, and I think that
yes.
it actually creates an unhealthy relationship with
That's
countries.
that's that's a separate thing, but I'm
Right,
talking in principle. In principle, that's not why they don't want to give foreign aid to Israel.
right,
They don't want to
and
give foreign aid to Israel because they hate Jews and they hate Israel, and they actually have this idea that Israel is trying to destroy America or something. It's like, I mean, you've been to Israel. Israelis love America. I mean, they just love America. It's like their auntie. I don't know how to describe it. There's no country in the world Israel is like more than America, except Israel. You know, so even if the government of Israel would want to do something against America, I mean, the Israelis wouldn't approve of it. They don't have any bad feelings towards America. It's just weird. I mean, there would be communists. Communists in Israel hate America, but most Israelis love America.
so there's a couple
So
more
it's a
comments
bizarre
I
thing.
want to read from the
Yeah, go for it.
so this one says he's replying to someone else. So do you know all about Mossad asset Landsman? Landsman is John Landsman, the head of Momentum, and how he
Oh
used his
my God.
fake group Momentum to punish Jeremy for his support of the Palestinians. Surely you can see the agenda is to get your people to leave the West and go to Palestine, just like the Europeans did to America. We are all patsies for the elites. Isn't it time we all stopped playing a game we had no idea we were in? So I'll explain why this is ridiculous. Momentum is the organization that helped Jeremy Corbyn take control of the
Yes.
Labour Party and then maintain control of it. And
It's the
therefore,
and
yeah, go
the
ahead.
flag is the Palestinian flag. Literally, they love the Palestinian flag.
Yeah, well, I mean, so let's look at some. So,
I'm exaggerating, but
well, they have
they
a
love.
lot of,
They were going to declare,
this
they
is
were going
their
to
logo,
recognize
but
Palestine and officially recognize Palestine. They are no Mossad agents. They're like enemies of Israel, really.
yeah, they despise the if there's any movement that's more against Israel than Momentum, then they must probably be just trying to compete with Momentum because they wave Palestinian flags everywhere that they are.
Okay, let me put it this another way. If you hate Israel more than Momentum does, you are in Hamas or something like that. Because there's not much further to go to violence from where Momentum is.
So anyway, there is this article that I showed. I think I showed it. I think I just shared it last week somewhere, but this is from Sputnik News. This isn't the surprise, though. I told you that I have a surprise for you, which you'll find very amusing, but this is not it. But Sputnik, which is also like RT, it's a Russian-owned radio and news organization, which is very interesting. They actually carry this. It said a Labor member called for complete extinction of Jews, nearly got away clean. Bombshell leaks claim and then there's goes through a lot of the details. And the fact is that Labor has been saying for the duration of Corbyn's leadership that they want to enforce an anti-hate policy that covers anti-Semitism, but they're just not consistent with it. And as someone, I personally, if there's a party that wants to be openly anti-Semitic, because I'm a libertarian, I've never had a problem with it. But Labor is a party that polices freedom of speech within, concerning feminism, concerning transsexuals, concerning black people, concerning whatever, concerning anything. Yeah, Muslims especially. I'd say the two things that they really police the most are Muslims, transsexuals, and then probably feminism would be close behind.
Yes.
And therefore, so to claim that, for Chris Williamson to say that he's standing up for freedom of speech, which I would say if he really standing up for freedom of speech, good for him. But he doesn't stand up for freedom of speech when people say things that are so to speak, Islamophobic. He's not saying that people should be able to say that, women ought to be in the home instead of in the workplace. I believe that there should be a freedom of speech party in the UK. That's why, I do listen to Sargon's channel. I do listen to Trigonometry.
I think they should all be for free speech. They should all be for free speech,
Yeah, the left and the right.
Yeah.
Brendan O'Neill, I listen to his podcast once in a while. So there's certainly a freedom of speech problem, but the labor groups, the Chris Williamsons and people like that, they're not standing up for freedom of speech. They're standing up for their views as a specific issue. They don't care about freedom of speech per se, and that's why I've been. I don't really see the benefit sometimes for myself for standing up for people who have, views that I completely disagree with, things like what Chris Williamson says. But I'd still say I don't think that he should be suspended from the Labor Party. I would say people who have a problem with that, they should leave the Labor Party, go to a party like what Rod Little was talking about, or what Nigel Farage is talking about, parties that actually do foster, an environment that they would like. If a party wants to develop an internal policy where they say, well, you can't talk about midgets, and you sign the papers, well, then, sorry, you can't make fun of midgets. But the Labor Party is not complying by its own policy. That's not a freedom of speech issue. That's an issue of Labor talking about it both sides of its mouth.
Well, they had people saying, Hitler did a good job, or, it's a shame he didn't finish the job, or whatever, that sort of stuff. And then they're saying, no, we're anti-Zionist,
Right.
And Ken Livingstone, who you mentioned before, he seems to have a problem talking about anything without mentioning Zionism and Hitler.
Yeah.
I mean, the joke about him is when you ask him what the weather is like, he talks about Hitler.
Yeah, he's always been a very...
He's
a very strange man. I don't know how
he dug up this story about the Ha'avara, the transfer of Jews to Israel,
right.
That Hitler signed, allowed 30,000 Jews or so to leave Germany or something. And he said, Hitler was a Zionist, because Hitler let some Jews leave for basically for money.
Yeah, he blackmailed he blackmailed the Jewish agency. What happened was people think that this was like a match made in heaven between the Jewish agency and Hitler. What happened was So this actually, it's not only Hitler that did this. This happened later with Romania, and people don't know about it. Some of these
Yeah, they would hold
countries,
the Jews hostage.
yeah, what they say is, look, if you have such a problem with the way we treat Jews, you can pay us money and we can let them go. And that's something that's happened a few times in the past. It's probably not been, since the creation of the state of Israel, it's happened a couple more times. With the Ethiopians, technically, it was the same idea. You have to pay to play in order to get those people out of the country, or else they're going to either face, I guess, poor living conditions with the rest of their countrymen, B, specific modes of discrimination, or C, where we would, in Germany's case, the people that didn't get bought off and brought over, they were killing them, a lot of them.
Yeah.
Especially, and then they invaded other countries and killed their Jews. So this notion that Ken Livingstone promotes is a flipping out of the issue on its head, because he wants to show it to be that the Jewish agency was they were, I guess, dancing the tango with Hitler, which is, that's just not what happened. I do want to get to my surprise.
They're just trying to save people. They were trying to save people. That's what they're trying to do. And Hitler was not a Zionist. In fact, he didn't want to continue this arrangement because he was worried that the Jewish state would actually exist. And he hated that idea. So, but that's just an example of Ken Livingstone. I mean, that party is broken. They're obsessed with Jews and Israel and Zionism and Hitler, and it's just really, really strange. It's like almost like a cult. It's really strange. I think the Democrats are going in a very similar direction in the U.S. I'm watching them with horror. People like Ilhan Omar. I mean, then I don't care that they have a U.S. passport. They're not American. I don't care. Call me a bigot. Call me whatever you want. They're not American. She's Qatari. She's working for Qatar. One day someone will find it out. I don't have proof of it. I'm just guessing, but that's how it feels. I think you're being played, just like we are being played, just like I mean, that's a whole new topic. But Corbyn is a result of something, and there's a lot of Muslims have brought in all these anti-Jewish sentiments, and they are now in universities, they're in academia, they're in media, and they're propagating these thoughts. They just don't. They are very subtle on how they do them, and they do double talk and double speak or whatever. It's like. The people that know what we're talking about know what we're talking about. What do you call it? Dog whistle?
Well, I think dog whistles are kind of a debatable issue, but obviously sometimes, in certain groups, people have, what I don't like. Instead of saying dog whistles, I'd say that there's certain, codes of speech within certain circles of society, and
I mean, the Hitler story, what we're talking about just now, the fact that the Jewish agency literally paid ransom to rescue some Jews.
Yeah.
They turn it into Hitler was a Zionist. The Zionists were working with Hitler. I mean, no, for God's sake. I mean, many countries
they never respond
people.
to the Grand Mufti association between
Of
Hitler
course,
and the Grand Mufti. They never even talk about that. And when they're asked about it, they sort of they portray it a little bit more as an anti-colonial struggle because of the British occupation of the Middle East. Now,
listen, we should talk sometime about the Middle East. Actually, I listened to so much, read so much about the Middle East, the history, the culture. I mean, I think there's an issue in the West doesn't really get the Middle East, and that's why every time it gets involved, it fails.
So I want to get to the surprise right now, which is
okay.
Which it might not even be a surprise because of the Middle East. Now, whoops. So I just reloaded. So
Oh, for some
George
reason my
Galloway.
thing is not playing.
George Galloway has founded a new party that he thinks will get done the job that Corbyn didn't get job, and he's calling it the Workers' Party of Britain.
Oh
And
God.
did you hear about this? So I think
Yes.
it was launched on the 7th. So I guess Galloway and he was right about this. He was predicting Corbyn was going to lose because of Brexit, because he said Corbyn's
Wrong
getting cucked.
analysis.
What?
I still maintain it's wrong analysis.
Well, I mean, in the event, the fact is that Corbyn did cuck on Brexit. Doesn't matter who you ask. I mean,
Yeah,
Corbyn used to be a very staunch Eurosceptic. There's a lot of tapes of him in the past talking
yes.
about
No, I understand all this. I think they're missing the point. I think Brexit is now, it means a lot more. Salman speaks about it as well. And when he talked about it on the stream and everybody was agreeing with him because it's become much, much bigger. Brexit has become something that means, I tried to explain before. If you're for Brexit, it means that you love your country, you're a patriot. It's become about something a lot bigger than the technical separation, and deals, with Europe. It's really become bigger, and they're focusing on this because they're out of touch. They're not getting it. Don Galloway hangs with Muslims all day, and with communists.
So
He's just
yeah,
an agitator. He's not a serious player. I mean, he's just a sideshow. He's like an entertainer, really.
so let me explain for the viewers, because I think George Galloway is known somewhat internationally because he's been on Press TV for a while. He used to go. I think he still goes on RT once in a while. He has his own talk show. It's a very well watched talk show among certain people.
Yes.
Yeah, and he's an unreconstructed communist. He
With love for Islam, incredible love for Islam.
Yeah, there's some conjecture that he may have converted to Islam at a certain
Yes.
point because he doesn't drink at all, and he's from Scotland, which is I don't think you have to be a genius to know that's a little unusual, but but in any case,
He loves
George
Islam. If
Galloway,
he's not Muslim, he loves it.
right? So George Galloway made his name on the international scene just like Corbyn from the Stop the War campaign. And even prior to that, he was a big supporter. He opposed the Persian Gulf War because he even visited Saddam and said that I salute your courage, yada yada
And
yada.
don't forget, he hates Israel. Yeah, this flag must be pulled every time. Every time you take a politician apart, check what they say about Israel and see the connection.
Well, yeah. So George Galloway, I would say, is even though me and Afikoman, we disagree on some things, I think we both agree he is absurdly obsessed with Israel. To
Yes.
like probably this is like deep state. This is like Star Trek levels of obsession. And I've listened to him in the past, and it's very interesting listening to
He's
him.
a smart dude.
Yeah,
He's a smart fellow.
he doesn't seem like a moron, but the problem is that he supported Iraq against Israel when Iraq was an enemy of Iran, and now he supports Iran against Israel. And it's like, dude, like these countries have slaughtered each other, like and I'm as anti-interventionist as the next person. I would say that there's people I know who say, oh, it's good that Iran and Iraq killed each other. I never say things like that.
No.
I don't believe that you should be in favor of war even if it's against people that don't like you. But he's been on both sides of that conflict, and the fact of the matter is that if you look at George Galloway's record, he doesn't really. He's not a person who was elected and then looked after the needs of the local constituencies. He's looked after the needs of certain demographics within those constituencies, and gone on the international level and tried to turn himself into some sort of crusader on behalf of basically every enemy of the West, especially Islam. And you can go through. So, do you want me to read through this, or are you kind of pressed for time?
It's getting late, so maybe not the whole thing, but give something from it, maybe.
Okay. So it says our program, economically radical with an independent foreign policy. After scraping onto the ballot paper to play the role of the constantly outvoted minority, Jeremy Corbyn surprised everyone when he gathered 59.5% of the total vote to beat his main rivals and become leader of the Labour Party in 2015. The following year, after intrigue and internecine warfare, he defeated his challenger Owen Smith with 61.8% of the vote and secured his position and the right to take Labour into a general election in 2017. By the way, in that he kind of overlooked the fact that Corbyn, during the actual Brexit campaign, he said that he was for Remain, and then he didn't really campaign for it. So he left
Yeah.
that part out. That's why there was a second Labour Party election, because they didn't trust him because he was lying about being committed to Remain. Thousands of well-intentioned working class people flocked to the Labour Party. This is another lie. They weren't working class people, wanting to believe that Corbyn would be different from Blair, Brown, and Miliband, that he would hold true to his professed principles, and that somehow we would have socialism in Britain. The experience of the last few years alone is enough to demonstrate that one cannot make a silk purse from a sow's ear. Nevertheless, this is not the place to chart the complete breakdown of this effort. It is enough to note that the Corbyn project is dead and buried, and that with it, British workers should bury any illusions that... Should I read this in a Scottish accent? I think it would go quicker.
If you can do it,
that electing a left-wing leader can change the fundamental character of the Labour Party, which remains a party committed to capitalism and fully integrated into the workings of the British state, a faithful servant of British imperialism. Under Corbyn, rather than a flourishing of left social democracy, we are witnessing its final meltdown. I don't think I'm doing it very well.
That's okay.
Ken Livingstone was forced to resign. Chris Williamson was repeatedly and unconstitutionally deselected. There was no way back for left-wingers like George Galloway, and even Mr. Corbyn himself was harangued as an anti-Semite in a disgraceful campaign of Goebbelsian fiction. So Goebbels, who was...
okay, hold on. I mean, this nonsense about this, I forgot to mention. It took years, literally years, to get it into the public attention that Corbyn was anti-Semitic. Because I was talking to a lot of people, and it was obvious in the Jewish community that Corbyn is an anti-Semite, and we were really like people that I talked to through Facebook and that sort of stuff, and a few friends I have who are Jewish. They were saying, "How come it's not being reported? How come nobody's, And people, we were very happy to see that finally it's out in the media. So to pretend that it's some campaign. I wish there was more of it.
Well, there were. I mean, I will say this. The way I found out the most about it, there were certain people like David Collier and this other guy, Dave Rich. These people who were very focused on bringing it to light because that was their focus, and they were, they did pay a price in terms of professional harassment because people started calling them Mossad agents for reporting on it wasn't just because of Corbyn himself, it's because the people who support Corbyn were they were committing acts of harassment and sometimes like verbal intimidation, threats, and even physical assault.
People have to understand that Israelis feel a duty to defend their country. I don't know if this guy gets paid by anyone to do anything, but I sometimes feel if I didn't have a family and I didn't have to worry about making a living so much, I'd want to be able to defend Israel from all this campaign of lies that 50 plus countries are running against Israel, because Israelis know that this is their country. They have to defend it. I'm sure if Americans were under such a huge attack for decades, a lot of Americans would feel the same need to defend their country. So even if you can't go out and fight, you still, try to do it by shedding light on things. So a lot of these guys are just doing it out of conviction. It's just they feel under threat.
So there's a couple more paragraphs left. It says, under Corbyn, rather than a flourishing left social democracy, we are witnessing its final meltdown. Ken Livingstone, I think I read this already. Labor's most left-wing leader ever capitulated. One U-turn would never be enough for the ruling class, and before much time had passed, his long-held positions of principle on everything from Trident to NATO to EU membership had been given up. So let me explain that very, very quick. Nuclear deterrent in Britain is mostly submarine based with this Trident system, and Corbyn, for his entire career, was a member of the Campaign for Nuclear Disarmament, CND. And
don't forget, financed by the Soviets.
Yeah, financed by the Soviet Union. So he was a part of that. He was basically one of their stooges. And now that he's, because he was close to power and he was saying, oh, we're going to stop this program. We're not going to have nuclear weapons. So the defense establishment was like, hey, fuck you. We're going to have nuclear weapons. What's that?
He said something even more stupid. He said he's going to spend whatever $20 billion or pounds on the submarine, but he's never going to use it.
Right. So he's basically saying, hey, we'll have them, but they're going to be basically, I guess, what do you call it? Like a centerpiece on the table, that doesn't do anything.
Yeah, but he's going to spend all this money on it. I mean, it's not like it's just, you don't spend money on things you're not going to use. I mean, every person, that's what I'm saying. People, the English people are generally, the British people are generally sensible. They're not idiots. And they know how to balance their wages and at the end of the month. They know that you don't buy things you don't need.
So do you think it's a little weird that
there were
like obviously he did very poorly in the election, but do you think it's a little troubling that a lot of people voted for him anyway?
I think so. I think it is troubling, and I think
not because, like I'm saying, because of stuff like Trident, because of the stupid broadband thing, and
it just goes on and on. I mean, the list of his stupid decisions and things he says. Forget about the anti-Semitism, which is bad news. You don't want. I mean, in a modern society, you don't want your leader to be accused of any anti. That's stupid of him to not be able to fix that. I mean, everything about him, just the whole thing. I mean, so many gaps, and I mean, the people around him, like Diane Abbott, walked around on the day of election with 2 left shoes. Did you see that?
Are you serious? Can I see this?
Yes.
Let me see.
Yeah, do a search. She walked around with 2 left shoes, and someone had to run out and find her shoes.
This is wow.
I mean, this is supposed to be what. I'm not
oh my
sure,
God.
But,
you can see it.
Third in command.
They're not even matching.
No. Well, not even matching. There's stuff about trouble.
Well, I mean, let's say somebody has 2 pairs of the same shoes, that would also be weird. That's the only thing.
Yeah, but why would you have the same shoes?
I mean, no, I wouldn't do it. I mean, there's a couple pairs of shoes that I really like, but then, I'm not going to buy 2 pairs of the same shoes. But yeah, you can see, if you're watching.
Yeah.
This image is this should be, I guess, the symbol of the Labour Party for forever. You can see.
I mean, this woman. There's so many videos. If anyone who's watching is interested, just do a search for Diane Abbott, and she talks so much rubbish. I mean, she's really stupid to the point where I feel bad for her. I mean, she should be an assistant librarian. That's the max she can achieve. I don't know why she's a member of parliament and why she's on TV, why anyone is listening to her. She's just a very stupid woman. And the thing is that if you say that here, you're told you're a racist and you hate women. I'm not a racist and I don't hate women. Margaret Thatcher, I think she was brilliant, even though she made lots of mistakes. I still think she was a brilliant person and intelligent person, and I would listen to her. But she never turned up with 2 left shoes, and she never spoke nonsense. I mean, Diane Abbott can't add numbers. I mean, just the nonsense she speaks.
Yeah, and the
incredible.
other.
And again, let's remember, she's anti-Israel.
Okay, but the other thing is, so the woman who was basically the Tory Home Secretary candidate, Priti Patel, who's Indian and a woman. The Labour people basically say everything.
She's smart.
They hate her.
And
they think she's like the worst garbage ever. And she's
she's a proper right winger. She's socially conservative. She wants law and order. She's pro-Israel. She's pro-America. That's everything
Pro-business.
that they hate. You know,
So,
everything that they hate.
so we're going to read the last couple paragraphs here. So he's saying the need for a workers' party arises from this developing situation. Thousands of committed and well-intentioned socialists are distraught and disillusioned with their experiences inside the Labor Party. Millions of labor voters are appalled at the undemocratic maneuvers of the party as it attempts to overturn the democratic mandate of the 2016 Brexit referendum. The establishment of the Workers' Party with the anti-imperialist and socialist politician George Galloway at its head can provide inspiration to those who, like himself, find themselves politically homeless or desire to put their talents and creativity and energies at the service of the working class. Now, let's go again to their economic vision, which is 3 paragraphs long. The Workers' Party believes that the importance of a planned economy in the directing role of the state. Free market fundamentalism has gutted Britain of its industries, undermined our manufacturing and productive industries, castrating our society and adversely destabilizing proud working class traditions, culture, and way of life. Our country needs the state to guide the economic life of the country in such a way as to promote work, to respect the dignity of labor, and to serve the working people. All adults have a duty to work in a useful fashion. Okay, that's important. All adults have a duty to work in a useful fashion. So if you don't do it, George Galloway has something to say to you. That's something
Yeah,
I think that stands out.
yeah.
According to their talents and abilities, and society has an equal duty to ensure that useful employment is available to all part-time or full-time according to the domestic, health, and life constraints of the worker. Useful work, well done for the collective benefit, gives personal fulfillment and shall be the basis of a society that collectively tackles the growing scourge of mental ill health. Anything to say about that?
Oh, I mean, I don't know who he's talking to. Does it mean working class? You know, it's all changed. It lives in the past. I don't know what he's talking about, really. I mean, the problem that the working class people have is that you brought too many immigrants. That's the number one problem. And you're changing the country, and we don't want to be part of the EU, and we don't want to be part of the greater Germany, and we don't like the Germans, and we don't like the French, and and that's it. We don't like the politicians. That's really what they're saying. Not, there's no there's no hate to the French people or anything,
Yeah, nobody
but
hates
there's
the
like,
Italians except
yeah,
for fans of what's that club? The one that got into a
oh,
fight
I
with.
don't know anything about sports, but there's no animosity really. I mean, even though there were wars and so on, there's no animosity to the people. They just don't like the politics. They don't just say, let the French run France how they wish. We'll be friends with them. We'll cooperate. We'll trade with them. We'll go and visit them. They can come here, but we don't want to take their rules. They don't suit us. That's what the working class want to talk about. They don't want to talk about all this nonsense. They've already they know that these people are snake oil merchants. Nobody's going to follow Galloway except a few fanatics and Muslims.
So hold on.
But
This is it's still getting good. Okay, you're gonna like this. Okay, you're not gonna like this, but you know what I'm saying.
yeah,
Okay, so next big bullet point: class politics and socialism. The Workers' Party is a socialist organization. The Workers' Party stands on principles and will not give these up one by one in the misplaced hope of a truce with our enemy. The Workers' Party is unequivocally committed to class politics. Though the fashion of the times is to divide working people along identity lines, we seek to unite them based on their shared class interest. It is not, quote, homophobic or, quote, racist for socialists to focus their attention on those contradictions that concern the whole working class in its struggle for socialism, while being totally opposed to discrimination on grounds of race, sex, or sexual proclivity. We declare that obsession with identity politics, including sexual politics, divides the working class. The Workers' Party stands with all those countries that have attempted to break free of imperialist domination and build a different kind of world. We defend the achievements of the USSR, China, Cuba, etc., not least the debt owed by humanity to the Soviet Union and Red Army in their war of liberation against German fascism. So I guess he forgets that Stalin and Hitler originally had a peace treaty in 1939, but where they split Poland in half.
Yes.
The Workers' Party,
Hitler was a socialist. I don't care what people say.
yeah. The Workers' Party defends the independence and right to development of those countries that are today undermined and attacked by imperialism, not least the heroic Venezuelan people. We categorically reject the attempt by the ruling class, its paid agents, and the EU imperialist bloc to rewrite history so as to equate the Soviet Union with Hitlerite Germany. He doesn't say National Socialist Germany. We shall defend the positive historical legacy of the Soviet Union as well as all those today who struggle for socialism for an alternative world order. So this is what he's putting on his initial manifesto for his new party,
Oh my
stuff that
God.
has nothing to do with
That's,
the British
that's what
people.
I'm saying all the time. Because you can see the poison coming out. You can see all the rubbish coming out because they're now fighting amongst themselves. So they have to bring out what the differences are. And this is literally an agent of the Soviet Union, but he's jobless because the Soviet Union doesn't exist anymore. I mean, I don't. I mean, nobody's going to pay attention to him. He's like a sideshow. He's going to get like the way the election works here is a bit like in America. It narrows down to 2.5 parties. So he's going to get nowhere. I mean, he might have some support locally where he's, and he might get on TV because he's noisy.
Well, don't forget he was able to get elected 2 times as a member for a very small party. So it's not like
Yeah,
I mean, he knows how to do it, but I
yeah,
mean,
but that's
he's
because
an older person now, and
yeah.
certainly maybe some things have changed. People don't necessarily, his message might not resonate the way it did during the 2000s when the Iraq War was going on.
I don't mind continuing for more a little more, but I have to run for a second. Give me a second. Is it okay?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right.
So I'm just going to focus on this Diane Abbott's shoe while he's gone. So yeah, this is pretty interesting. This is I mean, remember here in the U.S. we had Hillary Clinton with her retarded moo and her fall down the stairs in India. So I think that it's really funny when politicians try to claim that they're more competent than people in real life, and then you see them the way they behave in public, and it's like who runs their life? It's obviously not themselves. And then this is Metro, which is a very pro-labor paper, and they're trying to make this relatable and say, hey, I guess so this could happen to anyone putting on 2 left shoes, and it says, ever been so eager to do something that you just grabbed whatever clothes were nearest to get out the door? Diane Abbott seems to have had one of those moments today as she arrived on the campaign trail wearing 2 left shoes from different pairs. She got a bit of flack for it online, with some asking things like, how can you expect Diane Abbott to manage our national security when she can't even put the right shoes on? We're more impressed by it than anything, though. Despite the bad weather, so they turned this into a positive. This is how ridiculous this is. Despite the bad weather, she turned out to campaign for Meg Hillier in East London's Hackney South in whatever shoes were available. Get the vote out, Diane. It's about politics, not pumps. People spotted the apparent mistake when Meg Hillier tweeted a photo of them together. One person responded saying it was embarrassing. Another said, for someone who spends so much time with her foot in her mouth, you'd think she'd know how to put on a pair of shoes. However, someone else tried to get the discussion back onto politics, tweeting, for the many, not the shoe. Are you back?
Yeah, sorry. Did I leave it? Did I leave it unmuted?
Oh, yeah, you did. But I went through the whole Diane Abbott article, so yeah, that didn't take long. Yeah, she's an idiot. So we got, I think, so we get to the independence part of their manifesto for the new Workers' Party. It says so far they've put class politics and socialism ahead of independence. So they said, what kind of Brexit? What kind of Britain? This is the question in many working people's minds. The Workers' Party positively embraces Britain's withdrawal from the EU. Britain needs to be free of the EU regulations that would restrict our fiscal and monetary policy and prevent Britain from taking public ownership of key utilities and transport infrastructure. If we are to be free to direct the affairs of our country and to meet the needs of working class people, we must be able to have something to say on the free movement of capital out of our country as well as the free movement of labor into it. Under a socialist system, the control of our borders, both physical and financial, will be a guarantee not only of the rights of our workers to good labor rights and rates of pay, but will restrict the ability of capital to pack up and leave for greener pastures, abandoning our workers and decimating British industry. In tandem with these measures will be the coordinated action of workers and government to ensure that the ever-increasing productivity of labor he's so sure of this, arising today from the development of robots and artificial intelligence is put at the service of lightening the drudgery of work and not replacing the working class. We reject a future of parasitism where the British people, through the operation of the City of London, degenerate into an unemployed, feckless rump living off cheap imported food and the plastic electronic consumables of global capitalism. He didn't mention anything about agriculture there, so where's the food going to come from? So then he has the 10-point program. But before that, what's your take on his vision for the independent Britain? Does that sound anything like what you had in mind?
No, I mean, basically, he's coming from the same place Corbyn is coming from on that. Because Corbyn used to be, like you said, he was like this. Because they want to nationalize everything, and the EU doesn't allow that. They want to subsidize all sorts of industries, and the EU doesn't allow that. So that's why they want to leave the EU, to make this country a little USSR. The British working class doesn't want that. They don't want to make an international, diverse, whatever that thing is, and they don't want to make it. They don't want to close this country either. They're not that stupid. They know that the city of London is important to the economy. They just want a job. They just want a decent job, and they want to go to work and get paid.
So his 10-point program for workers is: 1, an end to the imperialist wars and financial domination, starting with the withdrawal from NATO. 2, rebuild British industry and abolish the anti-worker rationalization that puts profits ahead of people to provide useful, secure jobs for all in decent conditions with living wages, paid holidays, sick leave, maternity leave, etc. So no redundancies. You can't get fired. Decent, cheap, secure housing for all. Thanks. I know that. I know he knows how to build shit.
Oh God! Look, this is just like kid stuff. I mean, you know, it's stuff you think works when you're 14. What do you mean? I'm not going to hire anyone. Who's going to invest? Who's going to start a company if you can't take your company out of the country if you're not happy?
You know, Afikoman, I think you're being negative. I think we have to start somewhere, and I'm going to start it. You know, I'm not going to be as generous as George Galloway, but I will guarantee, as Prime Minister of Britain, free pizza every morning.
Pizza is overrated anyway. It's just a toasted cheese sandwich without the top part of the sandwich.
But it is free, and Prince Andrew likes it because that's where he was.
That
day
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know anything. I was having a pizza, you know.
Yeah.
It's funny he chose pizza because that's a sensitive word for some conspiracy theory.
Right. Yeah. I think some people were saying that he was mocking people by saying that. He was basically, you know, that was like his middle finger saying, "Oh, you can't touch me," and all that.
You know what the thing is? I mean, just my guess, right? Is I worked with a few of these rich people. They don't know what the hell is going on. They've got someone who's managing the diary. And they tell him, you know, today you have to be there. They say, okay. And they tell him, today you have to go with your daughter to a birthday party. And he says, okay. And they drive him there, you know, or he might drive even. And, you know, he was probably telling the truth. He was probably at that party, but he fails to mention that it was early afternoon party for little kids. And he could have had plenty of time to go back home, have a nice shower, get dressed, and leave for a late night in London. You know.
I still think that you know this. I haven't really read into the Prince Andrew situation, but
oh my God,
you know,
that guy is strange as well.
The guy has to be held to account for something. If
something weird is going on.
Yeah,
know.
It's the same thing that happened with Jimmy Savile. Like the guy got away with it for many years. And
yes, you know, there's also a photo of Ehud Barak, you know, the Israeli PM, visiting Mr. Epstein at one point.
Right, and records of him on the Lolita Express.
Right, and you know that link I sent you about this group in Israel. They're talking there about how mysterious it is that Barak's daughter is so wealthy all of a sudden as well.
Uh-huh.
So they're saying, you know, that's another topic again, but you know, they're chasing Bibi, the PM, for apparent alleged corruption, while God knows what Barak was up to, because his daughter is very, very wealthy, like bizarrely wealthy. I don't know much about it, but
Well, yeah,
that's what
maybe we can like talk offline because I haven't really looked into that. I mean, I didn't even know that this was happening. I mean, I personally, growing up reading about Ehud Barak, I thought he was like an amazing person, but he's turned out to be kind
yeah,
of a
me
piece of
too.
shit.
He turned out to be a complete idiot. You know, I mean, he was no good, and it turns out, you know, it's pretty crap. Again, it's the left. The Israeli left is not much better than the Western left. I mean, they're doing to Israel, you know, that's another topic, but they're doing to Israel the same as what they're doing here. They've got their version of basically undoing the nation. You know, they're representing all the elements that are against the nation. You know, they've got their equivalent of Inah Omar and so on.
Anyway, so there's 8
Um,
more points on the 10-point program, but they're all, gay
oh my
shit.
God,
So fuck
that's
it.
like a kid
I
stuff.
think we're done. Anything else you want to say, Afikoman? If there's anywhere you want people to find anything you're working on, or maybe things that you want to mention before you leave, I'll let you have the
No,
last word.
not really. I mean, it's been really interesting to talk to you. I hope I've been interesting to someone. I'd love to do it again some point, and I might be doing another stream soon with some Israeli guys, so that could be interesting as well.
What,
But
in
I don't
English?
know. Sorry.
In English?
I think it's going to be in Hebrew. I'm not sure really. It's someone called Johnny Versity who
Oh,
runs
okay. Yeah, I could.
quite interesting
So I could probably watch it, but I
organization.
don't think it's like my entire my viewership is I think only English speaking and maybe a few people from Brazil. But
Yeah, well, he had two channels, one in English and one in Hebrew. So I'm not sure what he wants to do and whether it's going to happen, but that's something we're trying to organize. So,
okay.
but that's about it. I mean, I'm not really active. I just listen to a lot of stuff.
Well, maybe share
Yeah,
some of my stuff with him. Ask him what's his opinion, like
I, I
my
did,
latest article.
I did. He's very busy. He's got a family. He's got a full-time job. He's quite high up in some company. So you
Family.
know, he's
That's
quite
George
busy.
Galloway says that belongs to the nation. So that's not an excuse. But I understand. So anyway, thanks for Afikoman for coming on. We might have Swarthy Immigrant, aka Greek Style 1, coming back again. He was busy today. We were gonna have the two of you, and he's like a real favorite on a couple channels. So
Oh, great.
if you want to come back sometime too, that you're always welcome back. And of course, we can keep chatting online sometime. But other than that, it's been a great night. I'll talk to you later, Afikoman, and
Thanks.
everyone. I guess God save the Queen.
Oh yes, you know that's one last thing if I can say. You know that the in British synagogues, you know, Jewish synagogues, they say a prayer for the Queen
Uh huh.
every week, basically as a thank you for allowing the Jews, you know, to enter the UK and giving them shelter here during the what was it, the Russian pogroms, I believe.
Right.
So the prayer is quite sweet. Nobody mentions it. You know, I'm not religious, but I think it's a nice sentiment. You know, instead of complaining, they're saying thank you. Unlike some people we could mention.
Right. So I'm not going to play the Sex Pistols "God Save the Queen" today because I guess it might be a little bit against the message. So one more time, this is
No, the Queen. We love the Queen. Come on, the Queen is great.
so
Nobody
you
knows why, but
so
but she's great.
do you want me to play it? I'll play it as we leave.
Oh, the Sex Pistol version. They hate the Queen. They're like communist agitators, aren't they? Really?
Well, I think John Lydon has. I mean, I don't think he's pro Queen now, but he's sort of broken away from the
Yes.
left because
Yes.
I mean, John Lydon is a pretty. I mean, I like
Play
the
the
stuff.
official version. Play the official version. Come on, that'll be funny.
You want that? Okay, so
Yeah, go for it.
well, I don't know. Let me just check. I might get a copyright strike for this. Let me.
Oh, that's true. Okay,
So
well,
let
whatever.
me
Play
check
whatever you
real.
like. It doesn't matter. No, it doesn't matter.
No, there's a way to find out. It's real quick. So
Okay. Just it's been a good week for England. People, the people I know are very cheerful all of a sudden.
well, I mean, I think more than I think Boris Johnson's kind of a funny guy, but really the joy in it is just watching these morons that are getting like really butthurt over. I think the only way that I can play this is the live version because everything else is blocked. So I think I'm just going to let me see here. Remastered. This one is blocked. Yeah, these are all blocked. So I'm gonna have to do the Richard Ashcroft thing. But anyway, yeah. Thanks again. We'll talk again sometime. And have a great night.
Great. You too. Thanks. Bye.
Bye bye.
Imagine a life without the melody. No sweet love song for you, for me to sing. Imagine my life without your morning smile. No look of love that says stay a while. These people seem to taste us, seem to play with our minds. Come on, baby, we're a little stronger. I know we can survive. Oh yeah. We're moving to a different part of our lives. On a raging sea, they say no man survives. We're moving to a different part of our heart. Come on, baby, now let us start. These people seem to taste us, seem to play with our minds. Come on, baby, we're a little stronger. I know we can survive. I know we can survive. Could there be life without the melody? It's what's on earth without the ERT. Imagine my life without your morning smile. That look of love that says stay a while. to taste the sin to play away.